headphones on, but I think everybody that's tuned in already, you know, the signal, the music. Benny's the one with the headphones on, but I think everybody that's tuned in already, you know, still significant music. Benny's the one with the headphones on, but I think everybody that's tuned in already, you know, still significant music. Benny's the one with the headphones on, but I think everybody that's tuned in already, you know, still significant music. Alright, while you're figuring out the music when it's still playing, but I said everybody that's tuned in already, you know, still significant music. Alright, while you're figuring out the music when it's still playing, but I said everybody that's tuned in already, you know, still significant music. Alright, while you're figuring out the music when it's still playing, but I said everybody that's tuned in already, you know, still significant music. Alright, while you're figuring out the music when it's still playing, but I said everybody that's tuned in already, you know, get it, Benny? Still significant music. Alright, while you're figuring out the music. There we go. So are we good? We're live, 5x5?
We are good.
All right. This is my brain. I'm Jeremy Scott Gibbs. Matt Pesta, Ken DeMars, the two earwigs joining me today.
Earwigs.
You know how the earwigs just crawl in your ear and then they get in your brain and then they lay eggs and you're screwed, man. You guys are in there tickling away. So before we get started, you know, they've had this, we touched on it last time you guys were here about the, Benny, just having fun over there. Before we get started, because we touched on it last time, what's the law, the Protect the Kids law,
I think it's COPPA.
COPPA, that's what it is, yeah, COPPA. Children, whatever it is. Anyways, so this is not for children. This is not a children's show. We're not playing with blocks. We're not cartoons. We're not doing race cars. But beyond that, I'm going to ask Ken again if you would read our disclaimer on the wall, and then I'll add our addendums to that.
Which says, notice, this place is politically incorrect. We say Merry Christmas, one nation under God. We salute our flag and give thanks to our troops. If this offends you, leave.
I like yours. Tony usually does the finger. He's like, leave. You're just like, leave.
Like it was a bigger word.
Yeah, it was like it is. It was authoritative. Okay. We also enjoy adult beverages. We cuss from time to time. We don't go out of our way to do these things, but we don't go out of our way to avoid doing these things. I was talking with Ken a little bit before the show, and I grew up around that environment. That having a beer after work and cussing was a normal part of it. They didn't go out of their way to be obnoxious or offensive. Mm-hmm. It was just part of the vernacular. It was how they expressed themselves. And then my mom married into a very religious family. Good people, nothing wrong with that. But it was the diametric. It was a complete opposite to where we don't cuss, and even words that are close. You know, not only could you not say damn, but you couldn't say darn. You know, because that's you might as well say the same thing. And I was like, wow. And there was other things that were there, and you know, to each his own. But I've come back to a place where I'm like, this is who I am, and if I cuss during the course of conversation, it is what it is, and if I don't, I don't. So, adult beverages or water. I brought out these are the Solo glasses. I actually like the Solo movie. I did. Even though it didn't star Harrison Ford, he was the original Han Solo. But so tonight, we want to get into why they lie, and we're going to continue our discussion on conspiracy theories because that'll come up during this whole thing. But I want to focus on tonight, why do you guys think? I know what I think, and I'm going to share that, and I want you guys to share it. Why do they lie about all the first? We know that they're doing this shit, right? Mm-hmm. We know there are people involved in 9/11. We know there are people, you know, we could go down the list. Why did they take out Kennedy? Why did they commit the Gulf of Tonkin? Why did they do all these things, right? And then, but my focus is, I really want to get into the philosophical aspects because there's a lot of great people out there, you know, that have done the YouTube stuff and documentaries talking about how, you know, how they did it. Loose Change was one that I was first exposed to about 9/11. That was a really good one. Yeah. But I wanted to get into, as I do with a lot of the other stuff, I want to get to the reasons behind it. You know, we started to talk a little bit when we got into Flat Earth last time we were on the show, as to why do they push that agenda? What's the purpose behind it? And that's what I want to stick with when we're having dialogue is what's the purpose behind it? Why are they doing these things? Because we can go through the details, and we will at times, we'll touch on that. But that's not what I'm oriented to. I want to see the philosophical reasons and the spiritual reasons and the motivations behind all this stuff, because I think that helps pull the veil back. Because there's a conspiracy over here to do chemtrails, and one over here to do vaccines, and there's one over here to weather modifications in all sorts of areas, and food and all sorts of stuff. And you go, okay, why are they lying about this stuff? What motivates you to the point that you will lie to not only cover it up, but to perpetuate it? That's where does your heart have to go that you're just willing to do that? And you had some good stuff, so I'll let you start, Ken, and then Matt's taking notes over there. So
since you just said, where does your heart have to go? That's the point I eventually got to one day when I learned that the upper echelon of people in the world would terrorize a young child or even a baby, and to the point that it's just terrorized.
Right.
And then cut this baby open so that they can drink its blood, and which is mixed with, I guess, a whole bunch of adrenaline, and that's why they call it adrenochrome. Yeah. I mean, I think it was probably that specific when I learned that right there. And I thought, I just don't think humans are inherently that evil. I just don't think they are. I think humans have to have help to be that evil.
Right.
And then that's when my brain took it to the next level, because we know that the angels fell to the earth.
Right.
And we assume that they're eternal.
Yep.
So they're still here.
Mm-hmm.
In church, though, we learn that they're an invisible spiritual form, and they're whispering not so sweet nothings in our ears.
Right.
And but I learned more things like there's leaders from all over the world that are going to Antarctica for some reason. The Nazis had some kind of base down there during and after World War II, or during World War II or whatever. And, I'm wondering, okay, what's the big secret there? How come nobody can go there? Why is there a law? I just recently learned that there's a law that all the countries uphold.
Yeah, there's a treaty.
All the countries of the world.
Yeah, the Antarctic Treaty, all the major countries that actually matter.
And nobody can go there? So I'm thinking, what's there? And why is only the upper echelon get to go there?
Right.
And so one day I just thought, I'll bet you there's some entities there that are giving direction.
I would not doubt that.
Certainly possible.
Yeah.
Kerry went there, on the day before the election or the election day in 2016?
Yeah.
Then the Pope went there, and I think the head of the Orthodox Church went there within about a year before Kerry. And I think they even met for the first time in a really long time. I don't know the history of that.
In Antarctica.
I remember hearing something about that.
Wow.
Strange. I mean, that's why it's interesting to talk about this stuff, because there's some unanswered questions there that I think everybody deserves an answer to. It's certainly curious. What are you hiding? You're hiding something.
Right. Yep. What's the scoop?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing is we know that there's suspicious stuff going on, and that's as old as the crucifixion, or actually older than that. It's a lot older. There's a lot of stuff that's just wicked and evil out there that people want to cover up. I think of a lot of Roman history. It's there's some over on the shelf. There's some Roman candles over there, and every time I talk to the kids about it, Benny, can you pull up Roman candles? Definition of Roman, like the history of Roman candles. I want to make sure I got that right, but I've talked to tons of people. They're like, "Oh, Roman candle, let's light up some Roman candles."
Right.
And I'm like, "Do you realize the origin of that?
Yeah, I didn't.
Was the emperors literally would take the Christians and put them in cages and cover them in oil and whatever and light them on fire in their gardens? That was a Roman candle back then. And I'm like, how easy it is that we take what today would seem to be a benign thing, a very innocuous thing, a very innocent, not necessarily innocent. It's a firework. I wouldn't call a firework innocent, but I mean, it's not something that wouldn't conjure up in and of itself the concept of people being put in these metal cages and lit on fire, And so I think of, I've studied a lot on Caligula and some of those other guys like that. And just demonic, but also very, very weird. And then I look at it, why they did that. One of the early false flags was in Rome when they lit the city on fire and then blamed the Jews so that they could go after them. Mm-hmm. So I just want to continue that. Matt, where are you at? Where do you got?
Well, one of the first things I thought of is just relating to something recently in the news is the whole Epstein thing. And
he didn't kill himself.
What Ken was talking about is how could, we've all heard these rumors about adrenochrome and missing children and child trafficking and sex trafficking. And I've heard a lot of people say it, so I'm certainly not the one that came up with this. But what makes sense to me is the world is run by a criminal cabal. They're all connected, and the faces on the organizations we see, I believe, are just more or less fronts to keep this narrative and this control grid going the way it is.
Yeah.
And I think in most cases, to rise to power within this system, you have to be controllable by the cabal itself.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
what would guarantee the cabal that they would have control over somebody to do things to the extent of what we were talking about, where most people would probably back off on doing some of these things we've spoken of. So it's hard to conceive of, well, why would someone do this and lie about this? Well, if you're forced to give blackmailable material on yourself to acquire power, then it's very easy to see how these people will do these ungodly things. So it seems like Epstein, for instance, was a person that he had the goods on all these world leaders.
Yeah.
And nothing could bring him to justice because, I shouldn't say nothing, because you don't want to be in despair, but obviously the controllers had a firm enough grasp on everything where it didn't matter. They were able to, gloss over that, and, I'm sure in their eyes we're past that, but to me it's evident in how this cabal operates, that you have to somehow give them the goods on you so you're controllable.
Yeah.
So, and some of them probably like it, but I think some of them are just greedy. I think most of these people probably don't even know they're lying about certain stuff because information's compartmentalized. It's on a need-to-know basis, and
right.
most of these people are just chasing the dollar.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. There's obviously other entities and spiritual element behind why do you see lies that perhaps have taken place over hundreds or
thousands of
years.
Yeah.
So that tells you it's beyond the agenda of a human, because obviously the lifespans don't
right.
sync up.
So it points back to a lot of spiritual entities pulling strings, and at the same time you've got a dynamic of bloodlines and other dynasties that progress throughout time.
That's what ties the flesh and the spirit together. With these
exactly.
bloodlines.
Yeah.
You see these royals; they're all intermarried. It's weird.
I don't know if I definitely go down the David Icke line of reptilians, but I do believe that there's a perversion of the soul. Definitely. I mean, there's when you look at, he subscribes that they're actually reptiles and stuff like that. They have a reptilian DNA, and I'm like, I don't know if I go down that. But you can definitely see that in a lot of them, they've been bred, they're breeding themselves to be sociopathic.
I think Ike's a good person to just hit on real quick, because if any of what we're saying is true, you'd have to figure there would be a resistance to the counterculture propaganda with paid agent provocateurs,
right.
where they're going to tell you 99 good things and then one bad thing just to
keep you.
keep control, like Sun Tzu's Art of War, friends close
Right.
and enemies closer.
Yeah.
And you control the opposition is the whole thing on how we've always understood this criminal cabal is ran by controlling both
Control the
sides.
opposite.
And you got to figure they're even trying to insert control into this independent narrative that is rising real fast.
Right.
And I think they do it with people that really give people a lot of the stuff they want to hear, where they say a lot of crazy truth drops. But then they tie it into something like they're actually shape-shifting lizards.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
I think what that does is the people that aren't prone to look into this stuff, it gives them an excuse to turn
To
right
ignore
back
it.
around.
Right.
And walk
Yeah,
out of
good
the
point.
saloon.
Yeah.
Good
And
point.
people like that, I actually dislike them in a way more because I feel like that's what they're doing, and they're doing it on purpose. It's a very highly sophisticated art of war.
How much do you think that those people are in that category? I tend to look at less of the people being controlled opposition and more of them being what we talked about as compartmentalized, or
Could be that too.
where they're regurgitating what they know. I've heard a number of people that I like that have veered off into, anywhere from 1 to 10% of things that I go, I disagree with that. But based on the 90 to 99% that I'm hearing from them that I agree with, I'm getting a glimpse of their overall worldview. And based on that worldview, I can see why they wouldn't go into that 1 to 10%. And so I don't necessarily chalk them up as a controlled opposition as much as a useful idiot in that case. You know what I'm saying? And how far is a step from somebody being a reptile, right? Legitimate, a literal reptilian, and them making a joke. There was a joke of Biden the other day. When his eye turned bloody, his eye went bloody during one of the debates, and they were like, he is a reptile, and he's shooting, then they cut to the thing of the reptile with the blood that, they got the lizards that shoot blood out of their eyes, and they're like, he's getting prepared to fire, it was all, so I'm like, how much, it's like, and I've had, I don't think I've ever had hugely outlandish theories, but you can think of some things that are just, I've looked into the reptilian stuff and I've gone,
The truth can be pretty outlandish.
absolutely. Let's just try for that. Let's just go for the truth. So we talked a little bit about money. You touched on that when you were talking about it. Certainly there's just, I think of the Batman, the quote from Batman when he says, he's talking about the Joker in, was it The Dark Knight? And Heath Ledger's playing the Joker and everything like that. And Michael Caine, his character, Alfred, says to Batman, Bruce Wayne, he says, we went out into the forest. He said, we were in Burma and we were doing this thing and we were trying to do all this stuff. And they kept coming in and raiding the village, And he said, we burned the whole place down looking for these thieves. And he said, at one point, I came across this kid playing with a ruby the size of a pomegranate or something like that, or whatever he says the size is. Point being, he says, we found out that this guy was stealing not to get the money, but just because he wanted to see the world burn. And he says, and he's ascribing that to the Joker in that movie, and he's saying some people don't want money or fame or any of that. They just want to see destruction. And I think that's part of the ultimate perversion. It's one thing to go after the money or the power, and sometimes those work really hand in hand. And then there's other people that you see that are just on a they've taken their self-destruction to a higher level where they want to take a whole lot of other people with them. Mm-hmm. And so I see those are my three main dynamics: the money, the power, and I want to see things burn. Thoughts?
Wow, I see the power aspect. I hadn't thought about just wanting to be destructive aspect of it, but yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, I can see it, because the perversion just is endless.
And I think that's when you were mentioning the kids, man. One of the, and I've had some friends in the past. We know one of our friends had a Down syndrome brother, and then my first wife had a Down syndrome has a Down syndrome brother. And when I found out years ago that one of their main targets of these rituals is Down syndrome kids, they love to torture and then kill Down syndrome kids and drink the adrenochrome. And when they're talking about it, it's like, it's so disgusting and abhorrent to guys like us, to people, normal people, that you go, what's, and then you understand the psychology is the Down syndrome children are so, they have such an innocence because they're so pure and innocent that to torture them, the level of adrenochrome and the fear, when you take something that's so pure, a child like that, now they've got the dysfunction of being Down syndrome, but when you look into their face, I've never seen a Down syndrome kid that wasn't happy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there may have been a moment to where they hurt themselves or falling down or something like that or whatever, but they're just so, because of that condition, they have just a perma smile on their face, And I've looked at that and I go, they take that absolute innocence that is a byproduct of that chromosome deficiency, and they take that to that ultimate level of torture. And I think that's what makes me think of those people just being, there's no power in that. There's no money in that. That's just simply being vile and evil for the sake of being vile and evil. And I go, what the fuck is wrong with you at that point? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff that I look at. And I think of all the other, just the mundane daily bullshit that we go through on a regular basis, and the little squabbles here and there. And I go, look, there are people literally torturing little kids with Down syndrome in dungeon prisons so they can drink their blood full of this certain type of chemical so that they can get a high off it. So you know what? Whatever you're dealing with right now, you need to take a chill pill and realize there's some bigger shit out there that needs to actually be dealt with.
Right.
I mean, get some perspective for just a minute.
That's a good one.
And that's what I'm going,
Yeah, man.
why would they lie? It's like, how many people cover this shit up? How many people just go along with it? Because it's like, dude, that's some wickedness, man. That's some demonic, evil
They
shit.
don't go along with it. They die, though, right?
Well, we know that they compromise them on purpose.
Well, have you heard some of the?
They get killed.
I don't know. I've never been, inside of any secret societies, but the people that claim to be and have left that go online and talk about their experiences, they say the highest levels of certain certain secret societies, which ones,
Right.
that they ultimately invert the biblical story of God the Father and Lucifer.
Right.
And they think Lucifer is like Prometheus.
Right.
And they worship him. And they invert everything because that's their God. And
Yeah.
they have this sense of duality or something where good and evil are indifferent. Doesn't really matter. It's just this big checkerboard. Everything's black and white. And that's supposedly who they serve. They think Lucifer's the god of light.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if you guys.
The religion of the elites is to invert everything we know. And I brought up something, I don't know if you guys want to get into it, but it's kind of mystical, the whole backwards language thing. I don't know if you
Dude.
guys
Oh,
heard of
yes.
that, but
Yeah. Live, evil,
supposedly
dog, God.
Aleister Crowley, who was one of the highest degreed Masons ever, they called him the Beast. He achieved all these different degrees and had a lot of education on all these mystical arts.
Yeah.
He said, the educated man must walk backwards, talk backwards, think backwards, do everything backwards.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty famous songs like Stairway to Heaven. You can play like a whole paragraph backwards, and it talks about some crazy stuff, and it makes like 50 legible words in a row. And I'm not talking about backmasking,
Right.
where you record something,
No.
turn it backwards, and then put that into the song. So then when you reverse it,
Right.
it makes total
Which is a
sense.
totally different thing.
Stairway to Heaven is a beautiful piece of music played forward, and it's evident there is no backmasking. That's
Correct.
spoken and played with instrument.
Right.
But mystically, when you play it backwards, there's a whole paragraph talking about 666 and the devil.
Right.
And
Which is crazy because I know that Alex Jones has talked with Robert Plant.
well,
And
Plant
he-
says in that song, sometimes there's a sign on the wall or something, and words
Yeah.
have two meanings. Is
Yes,
one of the lyrics
exactly.
In the forward
Exactly.
version of the song.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
How he says that. I don't think he knew that. I think
That's what I was gonna
composed
say
that
is-
song in like 10 minutes.
And he said that he
But they did
wrote it
at
actually as a,
Crowley's old house. Jimmy Page bought it.
and he
That's what
actually said
did.
that he wrote it as a Christian song. That's what he's told people since. He's like, no, dude, I wrote it as a Christian song.
forward and satanic backwards.
Which would make sense because Satanism is backwards. It's the polar opposite. Not that he meant to do that, but yeah, it's
Or Obama's campaign slogan.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. When you
Which-
play that backwards, is
thank you, Satan.
It's weird. Like
as clear as
how do you
day.
design that?
I don't know,
Did you
dude.
just come up with sayings until each one actually hits
So-
something
so,
going backwards? And then
I-
you're like,
I
oh,
mentioned-
let's go with that.
I mentioned a couple. How many of you guys? I've mentioned live is evil backwards. God is dog backwards, or dog is God backwards. The English language is prevalent. Any other ones that you guys think of offhand, other than race car, which is race car.
Level.
Level. It's level. All right. That one's a little bit more.
Mom and Dad. Wow.
Taco. What? Taco cat.
Yeah.
Nice, Ben. Ben pipes in over there. Yeah. See Benny over there. Yeah.
Taco cat.
You'll work it out. So, but that I remember listening to. I think he's passed away now, but he was from. I think he was a Canadian. But there was a guy out of Canada that I remember listening to. Again, his name's escaping me. I can see his face because I watched videos of him. But he talked heavily about that, about the perversion of language and how you inverting things. It automatically draws your attention to. You subconsciously are drawn to the inversion, even if you don't intend to. So to put it in the language that way.
Well, isn't it interesting? Doesn't Hebrew go right to left? And
Yes.
We go left to right. So
Yes.
Which one's forward? Which one's backwards?
Correct. Yeah. Well, I was. Somebody had a T-shirt on the other day. You know, they've done the Revolution T-shirt, and then they do the love backwards inside the Revolution, and I was like, And I was just meditating on that. But yeah, and using words. Let's go down the list of just words that they're using: conservative and liberal. Okay. Well, honestly, all three of us sitting here, Benny, well, all four of us, are liberals in the classical sense of liberal, because liberal is also the root of liberal. Liber is where we get library, liberty. That's where that comes from. It means to be open and educated. And now it's become this perversion of words to where the liberal is the leftist.
Be the ward of the state and back the state-sponsored opinion, and everything will be fine.
Exactly. Whereas conservative generally means to keep things the same, to not allow things to move forward, which is what the leftist positions are in many cases, is, either not moving forward or even going backwards. We got to get rid of the combustion engine because it's, all their reasons, and we got to go back to the horse. I mean, when you hear somebody pontificate on the liberal agenda, eventually they talk about, oh, you just want to go back to no electricity, and you want to go back to, no automobiles, and you want to go back to this and this, because that's where your progression ends up, is back in the Stone Age, because that would pollute less.
But wouldn't they
whatever.
argue that it's progressive in that it's, 99% of the time, it's progressive in protecting the planet?
Again, they had to work from, they adopted liberal, and then they moved to progressive and some other words to mask what their ultimate agenda is. They want to reduce population. That's not progress. They want to reduce
Well, you're looking at
the
a higher
they want
level.
to limit the resources. That's not progression.
I don't think the average person puts all the dots together to realize that's the only answer for
That
this
has
question.
to be true.
I think what this agenda has done about just the whole climate chaos and global warming myth, if that's what you want to call it, I think that's basically taken some of these people's best intentions and turned it around on. Because to not litter and to keep your environment clean and to beautify the world around you,
Common
that's
sense.
great.
That's-
But
yeah.
the policies that are going to come from the politicization of this issue is, like you said, put everybody back in the Stone Age. Every product has a carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And we're like 10 years past
We're made
a
of
no
carbon.
return point. So it's like, based on prior estimates that they've given,
Yeah.
we can't ever do enough to fight this. So they're justified to do everything necessary
Right.
to
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
And in their mind, my wife took a master's class, and it had a question in it for management of like governments and stuff, and it was called the tragedy of the commons. And this is how I think a lot of good people can get wrapped up into this, because this is what they're taught in school. Tragedy of the commons says there's a train going down the tracks, and there's a fork in the track, and there's a lever, and you can pull it to divert it to either path.
Right.
On one path right now, it's headed for 5 people, but if you pull the lever, it's going to change paths, and it's going to only run over one person. And the question is, what action do you take and justify your actions? So I think this question is really getting these leaders to be okay with murder, because they're being taught that, well, you're serving some greater good, and you saved 4 people even though you murdered 1. So in their eyes,
Yeah.
they could murder every person on the planet except for the royal families, right? And they didn't murder 6 billion people or 8 billion, whatever the population is. They saved it for everyone else that will come after. And
Right.
in their mind, say 100,000 years go by, well, maybe they saved it for 10 trillion people. So in their mind,
Right.
we are just executing tragedy of the commons. We're good people who just know way more than you, and we're
Yeah.
looking out for the greater good. And aren't we fantastic? We're going to murder everybody, and we still think in our own minds that we're morally upright people. And it's all just a lie. And they're not taught critical thinking in schools anymore. So you see how people can fall into this, especially with greed.
If you don't have a solid moral compass to begin with, then that proposal, that prospect of, and I tend to go with Captain Kirk and say I reject the premise. I'm going to reprogram the Kobayashi Maru test, because I reject the fact that I have to choose 5 or 1. I'm going to stop that train or derail it, or tell everybody to brace themselves and derail that son of a bitch. I'm going to do whatever I can, and I think part of that premise is put out there to invoke that idea of that this is your only choice. That's part of that.
False dichotomy.
It is the false dichotomy. It's like you only have an either or, and it's like, no, I have more than the either or. I've got a whole bunch of choices that can be made. And I mean, the premise is ultimately ludicrous. How does that one person have that position in that to pull that lever, knowing that there's 5 here and 1 here, and a train full of people? And it doesn't make any sense. That you wouldn't have that much time in a situation if you knew a train was coming and there were people and you had to pull a lever. It's a ludicrous hypothesis, but it's meant to invoke that, what you're talking about, that level of being able to make that choice between the lesser of 2 evils.
Yeah, because it's compartmentalization. Not all these people are super evil. It's a lot, like you said, it's a need-to-know basis. So there's a lot of good people doing a lot of this stuff. And if they only knew better, they'd change. That's
Absolutely.
why people like us want to talk about it, because
We've got to bring it up.
Change.
Absolutely.
Some do.
And that's the thing, that one of the themes that I keep pushing on here is, do your own research, be well educated. We're going to talk about the philosophical aspects of this. Look up the facts for yourself. We try to bring in, we try to put some things up on the screen. We did a ton last week when we pulled up stuff on, the different theories and everything like that. But the reality is we're trying to invoke a conversation to say, are you thinking about this? Or are you just droning along, mindlessly, not even stopping for a moment to realize what you're doing and what you're perpetuating? I think of the global warming people. There's a lot of well-meaning people that believe fully in climate change or global warming, and they had to change it from global warming because it didn't pan out.
Right.
I was talking with somebody the other day, and I said, man, I kind of would like to go through Al Gore's movie with some people and just go, didn't happen. All of his prognostications, all of his prophecies that he said was going to happen, and just go through it line by line, and just pause it and go, okay, can we chalk this up as a lie yet? Because it hasn't happened. He said it was going to be 15 years and we'd be underwater. Hasn't happened. But the premise that we still have to do drastic things to prevent climate change is still on the table and still being promoted by scholars of high intellect like AOC. We still have to endure these people spouting off this garbage, spouting off. Who's the little girl?
I got to tell everybody about a comedy act real quick.
You
gotta
ruined
watch
my future.
Based on what you're saying. Yes. His name is Will Franken, and he does. There's a 23-minute clip.
Oh,
called
that one was
Climate Change
awesome.
Trans Counseling by Will Franken.
Yeah.
He's the funniest thing. He's talking about, well, since it got colder, that also proves climate change is real. And
Yes.
he's talking about how teachers are like, my students are my best teachers, and my teachers are my best students, and I learn the most from my students who are my teachers, and my teachers are my students, and the whole thing is...
That was hilarious,
you hear
dude.
Teachers say these things like, my students are my best teachers. Like, that's just nonsense. Like, yes, you're going to learn inadvertently in the process of teaching people.
Absolutely.
But to say your students are above the teacher in the subject is silly. But
Teaching is the best way to learn.
if you're looking for some great comedy about what
Yeah,
we're talking
that
about,
one is-
this guy nails it.
Benny, if you can put that one in the find that one and put it in the
Yeah, I've got it up right here. It's Climate Change.
just put it in a link.
By Will Franken.
Climate
Inspired
Change by Will
Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg. Oh my goodness.
It's
He goes off on her too.
hilarious.
Have you seen that one, Ken, or no?
I've seen her little speech there.
No,
yeah.
but did you see this guy go through
No,
it?
I've not heard
Dude,
of
you
it.
gotta watch it. It's
Just to
yeah, it's
give the guy a
hilarious.
shout out. He nails it. One of the
Wait, what's this guy's name?
Will Franken, and there's a yellow background behind him saying "Unleashed" or something like that. When you see the thumbnail,
Yeah, if you can throw that
it's
in
a
a
23-minute clip, the one I watched, and it's
you
worth
either
a
find
watch,
that
the
one.
whole thing.
Oh, dude, it's hilarious. And but it's comedy at its best because it's the type of comedy that points to truth. I think the best comedy. That's why self-deprecating comedy is some of the most appealing comedy because there's so much truth within it. You know, when somebody comes out and is like, "Oh, I was doing this the other day and it was, stupid," and they're making fun of themselves or making fun of a situation that they're in, it's the most appealing or endearing type of comedy because it's there's the truth element in it.
I've been noticing pastors do that too.
Telling the
Downplay
anecdotal.
themselves, and I, other than what you just said, I've been trying to figure out why do people do that. I mean, to me, it's getting more and more common to hear someone be self-deprecating to them. Is that how I say that?
Yeah,
Deprecating?
self-deprecating. Yeah,
I've just been seeing it more and more, and I'm just, why?
it always. Well, you know me, Ken. We've known each other for a long time. It always bothered me when they would come up and, I'm not the one, and they just have this this humility that's, it's all the Lord doing it, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, I talked to the Lord. He said we're partners in this. Now, obviously, he's the senior partner. I'm the junior partner, and he knows everything, and I know enough to be dangerous, but we're still in a partnership. So to act like, we've all gone through the humbling phase where we realize, but also that humbling phase was largely a part of the church indoctrination. It was largely a part of that boot on your neck or the thumb on your thumb on you, holding you down. But it's there's that dynamic of when we sit at the end of the day, we've had discussions about that. We sit at the end of the day and we go, did I do a lot of things that are that evil, that are that wicked, to feel like I'm the most horrible person in the world? No. Are there still things I need to change and improve on and become a better person? Absolutely. So I think there's this over deprecation, this over humility. It's like, wait a minute, dude.
Yeah.
It's like you and I struggled with it from this point because the church was telling me, you got to go out there and tell them that they're sinners. I'm a young man, I'm in church, I'm a teenager or whatever, and they're telling me, you got to talk to them about sinners and being a sinner and talk to them about the 10 commandments and talk to them about this and talk to them about that. And I'm like, and one of the things I struggled with is like, how do I go to my grandfather, a man I look up to, a man I admire, who's got flaws, who's not perfect? But how do I go to him and tell him that he's not a good person? He takes care of his family, works hard, loves his kids, loves his grandkids. He's got flaws, he's got failures, but in general, he's a good man. How do I go to him and tell him because he doesn't attend church 3 times a week and tithe and say Jesus is awesome and hallelujah every other 5 words, that somehow he's a bad person? I don't get that. I don't understand that. You know, I haven't mentioned my wife this entire conversation. Does that make me not love my wife? You know, I haven't mentioned my kids this entire conversation. Does that mean I don't love my kids? Yet as Christians, we would have to sit here and be like, Jesus, oh Lord, you know, thank you, you know, it's like there's this overdoing of stuff that just, at the end of the day, you go, it's disingenuous. It's not real.
As far as the self-deprecation from leaders, it feels like the person is using that to either keep or grow their audience. 'Cause
Agreed.
maybe it makes the audience feel bigger. If I
Or
make
feel like-
myself feel small or look small, they will all feel big
And
they'll
ingratiated.
like that,
Right.
and come back.
So is that one of the
Feigning humility.
feigning humility? And I don't think that all of them are disingenuous. Certainly there are. And I've been in some inner circles that I go, I'm not staying here long. But I think that points to one of the reasons why they lie. Not just the money, beyond the money, the power, and the just wanting to see things burn. But some people just lie just because it seems maybe they're not as conscious of it. And it seems like the right approach, the right way to do things.
I want to change this to just a little bit of message of hope. And I think
Yeah.
if you apply one of the commandments about not having false idols, I think our human nature to pump up false idols is what gives rise to this whole thing anyway. It's like we
Absolutely.
empower everybody to do this to us.
Yeah.
So the message of hope is we're the one doing this to ourselves by having idols. I don't even think
Well,
there
there's
should be human leaders, you know.
well, we have to
They're
have
gonna let you down.
you have to have leaders that lead from a perspective, a correct heart and a correct perspective. But you're absolutely right. There were still judges in the land. There were still, you know, when they wanted a king, they were like, the premise of wanting a king in Israel, the Hebrew scriptures, was that they wanted a king just like the rest of the nations. They wanted to have a king so that they were just
Yeah,
like
you
the
need
rest
a
of the
king,
nations.
But the peasants
But-
shouldn't covet being king themselves. For all they know, their simple life is going to be more pleasurable than the king's life that has to administrate everything. But
Right.
because that's looked to, then everybody seeks it and it corrupts it.
I like what Thomas Paine wrote in Common Sense, and he said that, quoting from Common Sense, I'm pointing to you, Benny, but he said that government is but a necessary. I'm not saying it was. I'm not quoting that correctly. It was a necessary evil, but he was saying that government is something that we institute to the least. We're trying to institute the least amount of government for the maximum amount of benefit. And he says in there in this dialogue, he says, if men could operate honorably among themselves and conduct themselves honorably among themselves, there would be no necessity for a government, period. But because we have certain people at certain times that cannot conduct themselves honorably, we need to institute the least amount of government for the maximum amount of benefit for the people, for the rest of us.
Totally agree with that, but the problem is the people the government's supposed to be protecting us from are the ones that inevitably run the government.
Exactly. Well,
That's why we're
and isn't
stuck in this, and
it-
it's this conundrum.
Isn't
right?
that the dichotomy of our position? I heard it the other day. I don't know if it was Crowder or somebody was saying it, but he said, whoever it was, they said the problem was. Oh no, I was talking with Chicago with my guitar player, my good buddy. Jimmy and I were sitting talking, and he said he was having a conversation with somebody, and he said to them, he says, you know, the interesting thing is, he said, you on the left, he said, you jump at the chance to share your opinion and push your opinion and ram your opinion down my throat. And he said, but I'm over here on the right. And you know why you don't know what my position exactly is and you feel emboldened to share yours is because I didn't say anything. And he said, it's amazing to me. And I've thought about that a number of times. And when he said it, I was like, dude, that's exactly right. Is they feel the necessity. it's like, I want to do this platform because we want to share what's on our minds. Whether we're talking about conspiracy theories or, Tony and I did 3 episodes on love, or whether we're talking about logical fallacies or whatever we're talking about. I'm just sharing our hearts and minds and just, having a good conversation. But we're doing that from an innocuous standpoint, from a trying to, even though we had to put out the disclaimer for YouTube because of their stupid fucking rules that they're perverting, that this is obviously not a children's episode, but we're putting it out in a way that it should be take it or leave it. I don't give a shit whether you agree with me. I don't care at the end of the day. I know what I believe. It gets me through the day. My kids and grandkids and my wife and my friends and family around me, we all love each other and we all have a good time. We like to get together. We like to do things and enjoy each other, And at the end of the day, I don't care whether you agree with me. And I try to present myself in such a way that is approachable and receivable, even if I have differing positions, which a lot of the people around me don't, because the differing positions tends to be over on the left. There's a lot more people that tend to, we can come to common ground. Okay, you don't believe in, it's funny, I go, okay, you don't believe the earth is flat. That's fine. 6 months ago, 9 months ago, I didn't either. But then I started looking at some actual stuff, some actual data, and I go, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. How can the recent one video I watched was, how can the atmosphere exist next to an absolute vacuum? How can a high pressure, exist next to a vacuum? Because there's no...
Can you simulate that?
Yeah, they can't.
If it's science, you should be able to simulate it.
Well, the law of thermodynamics says that everything moves to its own lowest energy point, and the second law, the high pressure has to move to a lower pressure. That's a law of thermodynamics that's never been violated yet. They say because of the magical properties of gravity.
Well, you know what their feeble explanation is the atmosphere has a slow gradient as it goes to space, which still doesn't make sense because it's like, okay, so a slow gradient can stop the infinite vacuum of space?
Doesn't make sense.
And
that's just one more thing that
can trump the infinite vacuum of space, yet a magnet can, beat gravity. So the magnet is stronger than the whole vacuum of space, but it's yet when you look at stuff of like astronauts at that high pressure vacuum simulator, I think it's in Ohio somewhere.
Yeah.
One guy tried to go in there and he was like 30 seconds and his blood started boiling.
I just found that out.
Take him out. There's no astronaut that will go in a suit on Earth and go into a vacuum.
Right.
They die like instantly.
In a suit.
Yeah, in a suit.
And I go, because they show you that
suit look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man
Seems
because
like
it's
it,
being pulled
in every direction
away from
yes,
the center.
But that's not how it
they've
looks.
Got flexibility and they're turning wrenches and
doing all sorts of stuff.
Golf balls.
Right. It's
they literally
exactly.
go golfing.
Yeah.
And I love golf.
Yeah.
That's great.
You're the man. Yeah. That's pretty fun, huh? Right? The Sea of Tranquility. What's that? A par 5?
I mean, for me, the global warming is especially troublesome. I don't even believe in the globe anymore. Let alone global warming.
Okay, so how about that? So once you come to a place where you go, all right, there's too much evidence pointing towards the Earth being flat, which a lot of you it'll take you a little while to get there, but do some research, please. Once you start to listen,
they're picturing a pancake flying through what they think is space.
Yeah, and you gotta suspend. Listen, Scripture talks about how the earth is the Lord's footstool.
That's all there is.
It talks about the earth being the Lord's footstool. Okay, if you've been a believer, you've heard that scripture. So look up the earth is the Lord's footstool, right? And then look up the scripture in Genesis. It talks about the firmament. Okay, and it's literally firmament means firm. It means there's a literal. It talks about being a literal metal, doesn't it? Talk about being a metal.
I've heard different translations when you look at the different languages the Bible came from. I've heard rakia, which means like beaten down piece of metal, but then it says like the sun is in a tabernacle, which I heard is like a tent.
Yeah.
But it says the firmament separates the waters from the waters, and there's a lot of high altitude rocket footage, and people think it looks like a boat going through water.
Okay.
In fact, there was a Hennessy commercial where they showed, I think it's Augustus Picard.
Yeah.
Going up in his hot air balloon that he made when he said he saw the flat Earth in
Yeah.
the early 1900s, and he goes up in his hot air balloon and goes up and splashes into water on the Hennessy commercial, which is just funny because it's like you're always seeing these Easter eggs now
Right.
of references to this in pop culture, in music, in movies, commercials. There's been so many hidden Easter eggs over the years. That was just funny. But seeing some of these rocket footages, it does look like it's almost in water, and you're seeing what looks like the water behind a boat engine.
Right.
So it's just interesting. And then when you look at the stars, it does look like light underwater. When you look at the actual footage of stars, where you can go by a
They
camera
twinkle and they,
yourself,
yeah.
mechanical device, and zoom in on the stars and see what they look
real
like.
quick, I got the Bible verse up for you.
There it is. What is this is what the Lord says, the heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool. Where is the house you will build for me? Where is my resting place? Absolutely. Footstool. So if you think, is that hyperbole? Is that another one where we dismiss it
Well,
as,
it's got four corners, a face. It's fixed, immovable. So the law of reversal. What does God say? God says the world is fixed, immovable.
Right.
What does Satan say? Satan says it's spinning 1,000 miles an hour while orbiting 60,000 miles an hour while shooting around the Milky Way galaxy at like 600 million miles an hour. It's funny, when you look at the tilt of the Earth, it's tilted at 66.6 degrees.
Wow.
So it's just, the nonsense never ends when you start looking into some of this stuff.
so,
Oh, and the last thing I want to say about the law of reversal,
Yeah.
the elites say there's global warming and we have to stop producing everything to save the planet. What does God say? God says, go forth, be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth.
Yeah.
They say the opposite. And then what do you see when you drive across the country and take a road trip? Do you see a bunch of dense urban areas like you'd probably see on a global warming propaganda commercial, or do you just see vast expanses of open, unoccupied space?
trees,
seriously,
full of
drive around
trees.
the country,
They
and
s-
how much of it is just empty?
They
Nearly all of it.
I'm trying to remember the
There's
quote.
no crowding. It's just the urban
No,
centers are crowded.
I'm trying to remember the quote, but I've heard it said, and correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe somebody will pop in a chat, or Benny can look it up. But I've heard it said that all of the population of the entire Earth could fit in the state of Texas and have like an acre to themselves. The entire population of the Earth could fit in the state of Texas and have an acre of their own land to themselves. Is what I've heard. I could be wrong
There
on
would
the
have to be
exact.
7 billion acres in Texas.
How many acres are in Texas?
That's a good question.
And real quick,
Benny's looking it up. I had to grab some popcorn. Need a little snack, Matt.
I don't think there's 7 billion acres.
Need a little
in
popcorn. You can
Texas.
share with.
Sharing Kenny's bowl.
There might be 7 billion square feet.
Well, I think it was more than a square foot. Maybe it was. They would have enough for their own little quarter acre. I don't know. Point being, there's a lot more. Huh?
you might not believe it, but every person could have 2.3 acres, according to this.
What?
2.3 acres in the state of Texas. So we're overpopulated, and we gotta execute everybody. But if the entire population moved to the state of Texas, everybody could have 2.3 acres.
So when we get more carbon, what breathes carbon? Plants. And then we get more plants. And what do plants breathe?
They breathe-
Oxygen.
Exactly.
It's a total
They-
symbiotic system. that
Exactly.
Even if it falls out of balance, is self-correcting. That's the beauty of God.
That's the
And
thing is
Yeah.
we were taught in school that
I'd like to see somebody follow it up. You couldn't.
well that's what I'm saying. That's what we were taught in school is that plants breathe carbon dioxide and expel oxygen. And we breathe oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. And if you go back, where did the Lord put man in the beginning in creation? In a garden full of trees and plants and shrubs and grasses, right?
Yep.
So you go, so at the end of it, okay, so we started this out and I still coming back to this. Why do they lie? For me, power, money, just being destructive. But at the end of the day, they're lying about. This is what I want to do from here on out in this episode. Why are they lying? To me, what they're lying about is God.
They're of their father, the devil.
And they're of their father. Absolutely, you're right, Matt. They're of their father, the devil. So why are they lying about these? What's the angle with global warming, with 9/11, with Gulf of Tonkin, with it? Why are they lying about these specific instances to when they talk about the globe versus the flat earth, right? Why are they lying about that? I'll take that one. Okay. For me, what solidified it with me was when I began to look at the evidence of flat earth versus the globe model. And I started to look at it and go, wait a minute. Centrifugal force. Everything that we've ever experienced about centrifugal force, the merry-go-round, anything like that.
I got a magic trump card. I can just say gravity.
Right. But everything else, but every other experience literally in my life proves that wrong. The merry-go-round, what's the damn cyclone machine at the puke fests? I mean the local fairs.
The Gravitron.
Gravitron, thank you, Benny. So the Gravitron, right? It always pushes everything out. Okay. Then you talk about the vacuum of space, and it's this absolute vacuum. But the Earth, with no barrier, no shield, no nothing, doesn't lose its atmosphere into the vacuum of space. And I go,
Spaceballs with Mel Brooks. He
Yeah.
made the movie. There's in a capsule around the planet,
yeah,
and there's a trap door, and they're sucking the atmosphere out of the open trap door with the maid.
Right.
Their spaceship turns into a maid. He's like, turn the maid from suck to blow or something. They save it and they put all the air back, but it's just funny how it's sort of a wink at the ridiculous notion of the vacuum in that movie.
absolutely.
It's another Easter egg right there.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm looking at it from this perspective and going, why are they lying about this? Because a globe model doesn't make us the center of the universe. It's the heliocentric versus what's the other term? Copernican model. Copernican model versus the heliocentric. All right. I don't know what the deal is. I haven't been drinking that much. But the idea is it removes us from being the center of God's creation and the prize. Because look at, okay, so you brought up climate change, global warming, all that shit. What's their number one premise in that? Man is the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
They
So
changed it in the Matrix. Humans a virus.
Humans are a virus. You're a plague on this planet. We are the
We're
new.
privy to what you're saying, Hollywood. Fuck you.
Exactly.
Seriously, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
We're not a virus.
We're not a virus.
Right.
We're
We're
the pinnacle of God's creation, and Lucifer hated us for it, and he's had a grudge ever since.
exactly. He was beautiful, created beautiful, and
in
then
the book.
it's like, dude, come on. And so
Literally.
for me, it's like, why do they lie about the flat Earth and the globe? And we call them that, Matt. Ken, you pointed it out. We call them globalists. You know, it's global warming. You know, it's all the whole global agenda and all these things. Every time you hear the word global to us, we me personally, I don't know, you guys tell me, I always describe and go, something evil's underneath this, because the minute you
Most
invoke the
likely.
word global, I go,
But then they enact their little, whatever they think is their magic, and they show you the flat Earth map, i.e. the UN. So that
Right.
I think that's sort of like
Isn't that-
the whole
oh,
vampire.
yeah, I wanna touch on that.
Mission thing.
Yes.
They're like, well, we showed you.
yeah, I want to touch on that too. So let's talk about the vampire aspect of it. I want to touch on that. Of a vampire needs to be invited in. What I mean, so they're lying to us, right? We know that. They're lying to us in all these different
Get off
areas.
More if you somehow subconsciously consent through just never thinking about it. To them, that means something in their little legalese mind.
Because we
Right.
told
I
you.
don't know what.
Yeah, we let you know. Hey,
Yep.
you signed the contract. What,
Yeah.
did I? Yeah, you did. You did. You sold your kids into complete slavery, because here's the Social Security number.
We told you in some obscure
Did you ever
publication
think about
somewhere.
Maritime law, or if you don't take the placenta, you've left baggage behind, and you're considered insane or something like the whole
No.
straw man thing. Like, are you privy to the whole?
I'm
the
privy
whole
to straw
of
man.
maritime law,
Yeah, I'm
and
privy to
you have a
maritime law and straw
man
mans,
for your
yes.
Social Security, and that represents stock for the country, which is a corporation.
Yeah.
And you're basically lost at sea, and you're declared a monster, and your name in all capitals is
Yes,
that is your straw
that is your
man.
straw
There's
man.
all this weird stuff about how to be sovereign, and I don't even know. if
I've
it's
gone down that
beneficial
road.
to even try
Well,
and
I've
do
gone
it.
down the road, and there's some interesting things.
That's a whole nother ball of wax.
The biggest problem with going down the sovereignty road is you have to be in two positions. You either have to not give a shit about anything, meaning if they take everything you've got, you don't fucking care, or you have to be so independently wealthy that if they do come against you, you can head to Argentina or some shit. That's the two. That's the two aspects. Because I've studied a lot about being a sovereign, and it's like, you know, because we've all tried. I don't know if you guys
Well,
have.
the Lord said
I've
that.
tried it.
Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's.
Right.
So it's like I'm
And-
not even gonna fight this because
And I was involved with the group years ago, and what their response was, then we have to determine what is truly Caesar's, and not just
Right.
assume that because some because what was I was listening to the scripture earlier today or last night. Anyways, it came across, and it said, the guy was doing the prayer. You know this one, Ken. The guy's doing the prayer, and he says, Lord, Lord, I do this and I do this, and I'm not like this sinner or this person over here, or even this tax collector.
Yep.
Right? And you realize the tax collectors back in that day would shake you down. They weren't just collecting taxes, but they would also line their own pocket. That's why Zacchaeus was the one guy who climbed the tree. He was a tax collector,
Yeah.
right? I think Levi was a tax collector as well.
Yep.
And so they were like despised, kind of like we do here at the IRS, but they were despised because back then they didn't have all the rules that maybe some of our IRS agents. I mean, the IRS agents will work within the parameters, most of them, because they'll get in trouble themselves. But they'll work within the parameters to screw you over. Whereas back then they didn't have to work within all the parameters. They would just shake you down.
shakedown.
You know, and so it's like, oh, you owe $60, but let's call it 120 because I need an extra 60 myself. And you're like, what a dick. But anyways, so I was thinking about that idea of the shakedown artist and stuff like that, but coming from this, you know what I'm saying?
Vampires.
The vampires, yeah, coming into your life and having to announce themselves and being invited in. I mean, that's
And then you hear about adrenochrome, and you're like, well, these vampires are both symbolic and literal. Holy shit.
Right?
Benny, pull up adrenochrome.
Or here's a funny one everybody can look up too. Like, I don't know if you remember about 6 months ago, but
And take it off me eating
everybody was
popcorn.
talking
What the hell?
about, can the rainforest be saved? The rainforests are burning. Maybe it was 3 months ago. It was a few months ago.
And that's a bullshit thing
It was
because the
an actual
rainforests
story.
grow back faster.
Oh,
They can cut them down.
I've got an image on my screen right here because they recycle these stories.
Yes.
If you want to feel like we're kicking ass, just read Time Magazine 10 years later and you'd be like, oh, we beat that one. We beat that one. Every month you'd be like, look at these, earth-destroying things we beat one after the next. Because here's Time Magazine from, it's September from 1989.
Right.
And the cover says, Torching the Amazon. Can the rainforest be saved? So in 89, they were already telling people, look, poachers and, logging industries, they're burning up the Amazon and it's basically gone. Kiss it goodbye. Can it be saved? Look, there's a skull right here. It's very scary. But, here we are again. 30 years later, they're recycling the story again. It was earlier
Right.
this year. It was a big deal. It was all over.
You're
social media.
pointing to
All
that.
the-
Hold
all
that
the-
up. Hold that
all
up.
the people who mean well are.
You got it?
So
Oh.
I don't know if you can.
He
see
pulled
it.
up adrenochrome. Oh, pull it
Yeah.
back right there.
So there's the top, and you can't see the year. It's in the upper right-hand corner, I believe.
Right.
So just look
Right
it up
there.
yourself. You'll see that. And some
Yeah.
of you probably have these magazines at home.
It's in big print too on top.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
there you
Oh,
go.
yeah, the episode, yeah.
So
Yep.
you can go back in the video.
Okay, so let's do adrenochrome real quick. Read it, Benny, because I don't have my readers on. That's too far away for me to look at our regular screen.
Adrenochrome is a chemical compound with a molecular formula C9H9NO3 produced by the oxidation of adrenaline. The derivative carbazochrome is a
Hemostatic?
medication, despite a similarity in chemical names, is unrelated to chrome or chromium.
Scroll down to its effects on the brain.
Several small-scale studies involving 15 or fewer test subjects conducted in the 1950s and 1960s reported that adrenochrome triggered psychotic reactions such as thought disorder, derealization, and euphoria. Researchers Abraham Hoffer and Humphrey Osmond, I don't know if I said those right, I hope I did, claim that adrenochrome is a neurotoxic psychotomimetic substance and may play a role in schizophrenia and other mental illnesses in what they call adrenochrome hypothesis. Pretty basic name for it. They speculated that megadoses of vitamin C and niacin maybe could cure schizophrenia by reducing brain adrenochrome. While the treatment of schizophrenia with such potent antioxidants is highly contested in literature, and adrenochrome is not currently believed to have any psychedelic properties, a number of recently published papers consider Hoffer's paper a landmark contribution to the notation that impartment of what's now termed the antioxidant defense system seems to play a role in schizophrenia.
Dude, is there any link to
That was pretty sterile. And that's not what I heard when
well, that's CIA. I mean, that's CIA Wikipedia.
Pull up a couple images. I don't know if you guys ever seen these, but the Black Eye Club or the Red Shoe Club.
I'm talking about who the they are.
Who they are. You know what I love? I was thinking of, when I was thinking about it, when I texted you guys what the subject was going to be, I was thinking about conspiracy theory with Mel Gibson. Absolutely love it. It's one of my absolute favorite movies. I think he did a phenomenal. This both of them, Mel Gibson and
I watched
and
it a couple years ago after I started
dude,
to
and
get into conspiracy.
when he goes, it's they, it's the them, it's the, you know, them, they, the, you know, and they're changing sides all the time, and you know, they're changing allegiances, but it's them, it's the, you know, the whole big, what does he call it, the big dumb show, or the dumb show, you know, and he's just like, they're doing whatever they need to do to you know, fuck with everything no matter what they're doing. So it's like, yeah, so it's amazing. The adrenochrome is highly interesting. What is that? The Black Eye Club.
It's all these big players with black eyes on their left eye. It could be meaningless, but it's just interesting. And then there's another one with red shoes, and I think the red shoes has something to do with eating the kids.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's-
That's just what people on Reddit and different online forums have been saying.
That's louder than I expected. That's all right. I gotta get ice.
That could be nonsense. Like, admittedly, that could just be a compilation.
Right. I think there are some things you can infer and extrapolate,
It's just on the periphery of interest.
but then there's other things that are legitimate.
Take it or leave it. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care either. So, why do they lie? Why do they lie? What's your favorite conspiracy theory?
Well, I was just thinking, you know, with all the conspiracies,
Yeah.
they have to lie, really. They can't just come out and tell the truth about it. So about the conspiracies themselves, I can easily see why they would lie. But earlier you said the word fear.
Right?
And it seems like they want us to be in fear.
Absolutely. Fear is control. That's the spirit. Remember that scripture, God has not given us the spirit of fear, but a power, love, and sound
Right.
mind.
But there's more to it. I'm trying to really flesh out, what does fear do as far as our relationship with the Lord? How
The
does
o-
it affect us in that relationship?
To me, there's only two legitimate fears that you should have. Fear of danger, true danger. So if a bear's coming at you or whatever, which before the fall in the garden didn't exist because we were, you know, and it talks about in Revelation that at the end that the lion will lay down with the lamb. And so we're eliminating that fear of the predator and prey, right?
Okay.
So you got that danger, predator, prey type of thing,
That's
which
the
that
Mandela
fear,
effect. It says wolf and the lamb.
my bad. I didn't
Sorry to interrupt.
I didn't go back and read that one again.
But that's why I want to talk about that with you. I'm not big.
We're going on that one.
biblically, educated. I know a little bit, and I know you know oodles of Google more than I know.
I'll Google more. Let's try
that
a
like
duck duck.
4 zeros or
Let's do a
something?
duck duck go more than
Yeah.
or a
I just
start
wanted to
page
come up
more.
with a big number.
Well, yeah. But the other legitimate fear is the reverence or awe or respect that you have for God, and that's been perverted too. Being afraid of God. We're not supposed to be afraid of God, but we're supposed to have a reverence, just like you have of your father or someone in you know. You don't say what you think, what you're thinking in the moment to your boss because you have a fear, respect of at least keeping your job, let alone, not disrespecting the guy in charge, right? Now that's a flawed person to a flawed person. But when you're dealing with God, right, you still have that same reverence and honor. I think of fathers in a proper relationship, a good father-son relationship, a father-daughter relationship. You have a respect level, to where, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out type of thing, where you want to do the best you can, or at least, if my dad finds out about this, I'm in deep shit. It's like, I'd rather have the teacher get after me than my parents find out. I heard something, I was listening to something the other day, a podcast, and they said that, years ago that, if you got in trouble at school, not only did you get a swat from your teacher, but your parents showed up and would back the teacher.
Yeah.
Because the teachers were upright and doing things. Now they're just propaganda agents, and you wouldn't want them touching your kids. Right. It's like, what the hell? But you're absolutely right, Ken. It's this fear aspect of fear of the global warming, fear of terrorism.
Yeah, so it's just it doesn't. It's not that it affects our relationship with the Lord. It's just more about what you said, the control. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that's the biggest reason why they lie, is the control factor, and then there's other reasons that come down to it. But there's self-preservation, certainly. I think a lot of the underlings.
Edward Bernays figured out fear and sex are like the two biggest motivators to drive the retail dollar.
Is that what he said?
I think so.
Benny, look that up.
Sex sells. I don't know if there's a quote on it, but Bernays is like the father of all modern advertising.
He came up with the term propaganda and all sorts of other shit. Not a children's show, people.
Plus, it's just the devil sitting in God's shoes again. Right?
Absolutely.
The devil wants to ascend to God's throne and be God, so if he can create his own way for us to fear him, it's like we should laugh at the devil. Pathetic.
Isn't that's the picture in Revelation?
Fear God.
That's literally the picture in Revelation is when the creature is brought up. It says that the world will look and go, that?
Yeah. We should pity the devil.
That thing? That's what we had? Because all he can do is, he's the prince of the power of the air. He's just a whisperer. He has no... We are the ones sitting here. That's what bothers me, Ken, too, about the people with the pastors that get up there with all the humility and I'm no good and everything like that, and I'm just not worthy to be up here. It's like you're feeding into the bullshit. I understand it. We all come to a point in our lives at some point, if we're believers, where we face reality and we realize the totality of it, and we go, dude, it's overwhelming to me. I get that. Okay. And we all come to we come to an understanding of what humility looks like, and that pride comes before destruction, and the haughty spirit before a fall. We get that. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at the false humility and it's like, wait a minute, dude, the devil's trying to get me into this place to where I think I'm less than I am. When I got the revelation from the Lord, it was a long process. Okay? It was a long process to get to that point. But when I finally got to the revelation and he said, you are far more powerful than you know you are. And he showed me, I've shared with you this, and I've taught it several times about the cow. My grandfather, Grandpa Gibbs, on my adopted side, taught me this. We went into the barn one day, and there's a 1,500, 1,800 pound steer in there. It's a huge cow, man. He's huge, okay? And we had this one Red Bull that, not the drink, he was a red heifer, right? Big red heifer, Red Bull. Anyways, he was a big male red cow. Let me say it that way so I'm getting my terminology straight. And he literally jumped over the wall in the barn. So when you went down the lower level of the barn where I grew up, it was about 8.5 feet tall. It wasn't that tall. Maybe it was 7.5 feet tall. It wasn't that tall. And the walls in there were sometimes they were gates. Sometimes we just had pallets that were fastened in there because, oak pallets are pretty tough. So you put an oak pallet in there and you had them lining up. And this one cow figured out that it could do it. They're strong. And it jumped over the wall. And I remember my uncle opening the door to the barn, the lower door, to go in there and feed the animals and stuff. And this bull comes booking out at him that had gotten into the main area outside of the pens, because the pens were on the outside, and then there was a main area in the middle where they fed them on both sides. And it literally charged him, took part of the door out, took my uncle out, and then the rest of the family were tracking this beast down, okay? And I remember we're out, and it's the winter, and this fucking cow's just jumping and going, and just doing its thing. And my uncles are out there on snowmobiles trying to lasso this son of a bitch. And he's just going. And I remember my Uncle Al was on the snowmobile, and all of a sudden, and he gets up next to this cow, and he's going to lasso this, okay? And this is not the Wild West. This is fucking Michigan, up in the Thumb area. And he's going to lasso this guy, and he goes, wham, and just knocks his ass. Knocked the snowmobile over sideways. Of course, it comes to an abrupt stop, and eventually we got him. And I looked at, Grandpa and my uncle and all the rest of the uncles there, and I'm like, Uncle Danny, and I'm like, what are we gonna do here? And they're like, that's, they didn't cuss very much. They were like, that son of a bitch is going to be meat. He was going to be processed in a month or two, but he's going now. And I'm like, okay, so we'll have some good steak here soon. Hopefully we didn't bruise any of it. But what Grandpa said that came out of that whole thing that was profound to me. Obviously, the story I remember very vividly. I'm out there in my snowmobile boots thinking, this is fucking cool. We got to catch cow. It's over in the other neighbors. We had 120 acres, and he's on the other side. He's across the street in the neighbors' 80, 100 acres, whatever it was. And what Grandpa said to me was, about that cow, he said, if any of the other cows knew how big they were, they would never listen to us. They would never stay confined to their area. Mm-hmm. They would not be in cooperation with us, because we milked some of them, but a lot of them we just had for meat, but we treated them very humanely. Grandpa would name most of them. And so there was this, he said, if they knew how big they were, you couldn't contain them. And when the Lord gave me this revelation of how powerful we are as people, he said, if you knew how powerful and creative you are, you would potentially destroy yourself. I have to allow the circumstances and situations around the vast majority of people to shape and mold them in such a way that they don't learn too fast how potentially powerful they are. Because once you get the revelation that you are second only to God himself, only to God. I don't even like saying himself, because God embodies male and female. But you're second only to God in the totality of God. Okay? In the hierarchy of his creation. In fact, if you look at Genesis at the beginning and really meditate on it, you would understand that we were intricately involved in creation. In the beginning of Genesis 1, it talks about how the blueprint was laid out. On the first day, God did this. Second day, he did this. Third day, he did this. Fourth day. But then there's a change at like verse 26. And it says, now when the earth was void and formless and there was nothing else, he did just enough so that he could then form man out of the dust of the earth. And then you listen, after man's been formed, that all of the rest of the creation comes in line after that. And so what I've seen in there is that the Lord laid out a blueprint. And as a builder, I understand this. And even as an apostle, I understand what a foundation is. A foundation builder. But then he laid out this framework. And then he brought it before, and there's a very interesting phraseology in there, and it says that he brought all the animals before Adam to see what he would call them. Well, in the Hebrew language, when you called something forth, if you look at all the names of the patriarchs, and then the names of kings, and the names of significant people that are marked out in the Hebrew scriptures, their names not only were significant of who they were and what their purpose or their destiny was, but a lot of times it was, they called out their, before they were even born, they would call out what they were going to do. You know, it was significant. It wasn't just giving somebody a name. You follow me? So when we were looking at this, and it says this phraseology is he brought the animals before him to see what he would call them. I literally believe that the Lord brought the image or the idea or concept of the animal before Adam, and then Adam and God together, but Adam being the voice in the earth, called forth that creature to manifest in the earth. And if we would understand from that dynamic how absolutely powerful we are, and for some people that's going way over their head, but you don't realize how much you create your environment and your destiny and your purpose every day by the words that come out of your mouth. And that's why it was on me today that we needed to talk about why they lie. Because the lie, no matter what it's about, 9/11, Gulf of Tonkin, JFK, global warming, whatever it is, whatever the lie is about, ultimately what it comes back to is they're lying about something because the power of their words, as the devil and all the other entities are whispering in their ear, the power of their words is then going through them, and then they're speaking into an atmosphere, and they don't even realize how powerful they are to be able. God created the earth with his voice, and we're literally sitting here creating our destiny or shaping our destiny. There's a determined destiny and there's an alternate destiny that we can choose. And we're literally shaping which direction we're going to go by the words that are coming out of our mouth. And I look at all these people, globalists or the cabal or the New World Order or whatever the fuck you want to call them. They're literally speaking. They have to be the vampire. They have to ask for permission or at least tell us what they're doing so they can be invited in. Those are verbs. That's a verbal conversation. That's a verbal intercourse. That's an interaction, right? And then why do they get on the platform and they just lie so easily? And I go, because they're speaking into this creation what they believe should happen. And they're propping up people like Greta Thunberg.
John 1. Right?
John 1, yes. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And literally, and then it says in verse, that's why I've taught for many years, Ken knows this, that I don't believe that the Bible is the Word of God. And people go, what? And I go, no, the Bible is Scripture, contains the words that were spoken by God, but it also contains stories. It also contains words spoken by other people.
All truth is the Word of God, right?
Well, ultimately, what it says is, John 1:1, the Word in the beginning was the Word was with God. And the Word was with God.
The Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Right. And then verse
was in the beginning with God.
Right.
All things were made by Him. Without Him, nothing
has been made.
Yes,
that has been made.
Yep.
And then verse 14. And the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. Yeah. And that's the thing is, so the Word personified the flesh man, the flesh embodiment of God, what was personified by John as the Word.
Words are a big deal.
No other animal in creation has a language that is developed to our standpoint. Mm-hmm. No other creation. Yes, dolphins can talk to each other. Yes, the dogs can let each other know something's going on, and the deer can flip their tail and know. But there's literal animals that can be trained, right? A friend of ours brings dogs in, or pays for dogs to be brought in to be trained for police forces from Germany. And sometimes they have to retrain these dogs or train the people to speak to the dogs because the dogs have been trained in German. So the dogs all their commands have been given in German, right? So now they have to retrain the dogs or retrain the people, either the people to speak German or the dogs to learn English, because they've been given our language and they don't know how to learn it themselves. So they adapt. And that goes in the whole Tower of Babel. Anyways, so to me, why they lie is because it's an ultimate perversion of who we are as the creation of God. And as powerful as we are we were involved in creation through Adam to help bring this world about. And so that's why, look at all the stuff that we're looking at. What is global warming's ultimate agenda? Get rid of man to quote unquote preserve the earth. But everything that they're talking about for the preservation of earth wouldn't actually preserve the earth.
Yep.
It would destroy the earth. Look at all of those things. And I go, they want to eliminate man and eliminate his voice other than the voice that they have within the earth. The puppet string masters, the pullers of the strings. And they've got all these people that are either duped into believing it or are useful idiots who are going along with them. But the vast majority of the people don't believe it. You're drawing the Tower of Babel over there, Matt?
Yeah.
I love the Tower of Babel because he took the language, which was the most powerful thing, and he said, if as one people speaking one dialect or language, they've begun to do this, nothing will be impossible for them. So he separated them out. He confused their language so that they couldn't communicate that. And then that's the power of the Holy Spirit. Being filled with the Holy Spirit, being able to speak in tongues. It's been perverted. It's been misunderstood. But on Pentecost, that first Pentecost, the reason that they were given the ability to speak in tongues is so that they could all speak in one language, but without always understanding what they were saying, but they could still speak a heavenly directive that wouldn't cause their ultimate destruction, but would bring about their greatest benefit. And so I look at this whole dynamic of these conspiracies and all this other shit that's going on, and I go, the reason they lie is because the embodiment of creation. We are in the image of God, who created the entire world. We are creators. Satan is simply a perverter. So you've got all of his minions out there operating to what? To pervert the creation. Whereas when you look at, what's the most innovative things that governments come up with? War. Yeah, they come up with tools of destruction. War.
Yeah.
That's what they come up with, right?
They didn't even come up with that. They
Well-
just stole it from the people that did.
But you know what I'm saying is the
Yeah.
the biggest thing they come up with is tools of destruction. That's the biggest. That's their highest accomplishment, right?
contribution.
That's their highest contributions. But if you look at the Renaissance, or you look at Rome, or you look at the Western America and the Western countries, the liberated free countries, right? The inventions that we've come up with that don't involve destruction, but involve promotion and the liberation of the soul and freedom. Those are phenomenal things. The progress we've made in those areas, aside from war, even hampered by war. And you go, that's an example of the creative spirit within us from God. Why do they lie? To either harness and try to control that for destructive ends, or to suppress it completely.
That fear. Yeah, and when you were talking about us not realizing who we are, earlier I asked, well, how does that fear affect our relationship with the Lord? Mm-hmm. Well, if we're buried in fear, we're really not going to realize who we are.
Absolutely.
There's no way.
Absolutely.
So in that respect, it affects our relationship with the Lord. So yeah, they would lie and do all these things that they do with the conspiracies and everything to keep us fearful, unsure. I mean, think of every word you could think that would line up with those two words.
Right.
And we have no ability to realize who we really are when we're constantly in fear.
Absolutely. And that's a big aspect of it is, I think one of the reasons, obviously, is to distract us from who we are and the creative presence that has been placed in our spirit. And I think we feel it. You know, but I think it gets so suppressed that it starts to be drowned out. It's like a little kid. There was that story, Ken. Do you remember that story? They were talking about the little kids. There was a story about these little kids, and they were talking about having this understanding of the voice of God and hearing God. And this mom comes into the room one time, and she overhears. She just like cracked the door or whatever, and she hears like the 4 or 5 year old or 6 year old. I don't know. The kid was pretty articulate, but he says to the younger child that's in the crib, he says, "I need you to to hurry up and grow fast, or grow up, or no, it's something like, I need you to start talking, not grow up. He says, because I'm forgetting how to hear the Lord, and I need you to remind me how to do it. So there's one kid looking at another kid, and the innocence is fading away. And he's trying to get the information, rekindle that connection. And I think of that aspect of when we get so many of these conspiracies and so many of these other things, and certainly a lot of them have these global dynamics to them, right? World reaching. I want to change my vernacular to this world reaching dynamic. So they have this world reaching or entire, the whole world's scope in mind. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, how many of these things are just distractions? How many of the people are lying just to distract us? Period. Yeah. That's the ultimate origin of their agenda, is just to distract us.
Isn't that one of the disciples, I think, said, compared to the magnitude of the good news of the work that Christ did at Calvary, that's like 99% of what we should be dwelling on. But as a church, I think he was saying in the context of the church, and they're arguing about all these other things. It's like, look, these other things shouldn't play any role. You should be so focused on the good news that all these things should pale in comparison to living in the active knowledge and awareness of what happened, what's already been won. Like, we've won already.
Well, it says we've been made more than conquerors, so why are we sitting here acting like we're defeated?
What we should be dwelling on is the work's already been done. Like,
yeah.
We should be celebrating constantly. Anytime I think we give in the anger and fear, then we're kind of losing temporarily sight of that work that's been done, and it's hard. We're all going to do that. But
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a good reminder that that's what you should be dwelling in. Like, if you want to meditate on an idea, that's I think the best idea to meditate on is the victory's been won already, and there's good news if you just stop to realize it, that the pain you're in now compared to what will be is so minuscule, you just can't see that perspective yet. When you're in time, you can't see infinity.
Right.
When you're in infinity, you're going to look back at when you suffered for a moment in time to probably build character, right? I've seen all these things on, you do all these things to a plant, and they're kind of hardships, but it makes the plant grow stronger. And it's like, so you're doing all these things now to get stronger, and then you can thrive in infinity. It's going to seem like nothing, all this earthly, fleshly problems.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right, man. And Ken's done plants at the house, and I've talked about the chicken. And if you break the chicken out of the egg as it's trying to, and don't allow it to struggle, you literally kill it because it doesn't build the strength that it needs to survive. If you don't take the seedlings and put a fan on them, and the light, proper lighting and stuff like that, when you take them outside to replant them, they're not strong enough. So we need adversity. We need that struggle. We need that. I mean, how do you build muscles? You break them down and you strengthen them. You build them back up. So we need struggle. We need opposition. But it's a matter of, are we choosing the good opposition versus are we allowing the negative opposition just to come in? I was thinking about people that, and we've talked about this, Ken, that people in this country, we have it so good. And some people say, I'm like, listen, if you can bitch and complain about something, you've got it better than 90% of the world. Because 90% of the world can't bitch and complain about anything. Either there isn't, either you're so poor and destitute that nobody gives a shit, or more than likely, you're in a place that if you said something, you could be killed or arrested.
You could be in China.
Yeah, you're not going to say shit. You're going to be harvested. Here, I'm going to sell your organs.
Yeah. Every layperson has one of these in their pocket. This is more powerful than what took the astronauts to the moon, if you buy that. So you have more here.
I don't buy that.
Than what NASA claims got them to the moon and back.
Right.
So think about that. I mean, kings of old.
Right.
What would they have thought of this black mirror in your pocket, this magic mirror on the wall?
Right.
That you have now in your pocket that you can ask almost an infinite amount of questions, and within seconds you get the answer. That's crazy. So just that amount of knowledge. I mean, how many people do you come across that say, "Oh, I had this break, but I YouTubed it, so I fixed it myself, so I didn't have to pay somebody to come out and fix it. So it's like this expanding
Dude.
knowledge that we have is priceless.
Absolutely. I've said it before that how many people have what we have at our fingertips right now.
That's why I hope it doesn't go away with all these censorship laws and uploading everything to the cloud and we're just going to throw that out.
I don't think
want
you
them to know
I
that.
don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle. I don't think they can do it. And I've said this
probably can't.
I've said this too about our country
They
in,
want to, but
in particular.
Real quick before we go on to the next.
Yeah, is there
We just got a comment saying the most advanced creation made now is quantum computer to analyze potential terrorist cell members,
The D wave.
movements in a selected population. A tool made out of fear for military ends, not to create.
exactly. I think that's my buddy Tim.
Is
Thanks,
that
Tim.
Is that the D wave? You guys ever looked up the D wave?
Yeah.
It claims to be a quantum computer.
Yeah.
Because they get
And they're trying to do the flash computers.
superposition through getting. This.
I did hear somebody today, and it was very interesting. I don't know. I'd have to delve into it more, but they said that AI will never truly. That AI, the way that they envision it in movies and stuff like that, will never manifest that way. And his premise was because it's not self-aware from the beginning, it will not become self-aware at some point.
Because the Earth's flat and everything's a globe, so the AI is going to want to know the truth. What roles is the AI going to have in the lie? Probably going to break.
It's going to go, wait a minute. This is all Photoshop? What the shit?
They'll tell AI
It's
all
a
the
problem
lies.
for AI.
It is.
They'll
Alpha Zero is pretty impressive. I don't know if you guys know about that. It's the AI that beat the world's chess champion after
Yeah.
learning chess for like 2 hours.
Right?
The most
wow.
exciting games are when Alpha Zero plays Alpha Zero, and it's like these perfect games. But a lot of times it just results in a draw. So they
Wow.
play Alpha Zero versus Alpha Zero when you get Castle, because then you get a whole another set of combinations that can happen. But you know, for chess geeks, they love watching these Alpha Zero.
You were playing chess when you walked in
It
today.
is really good. this
We're
Alpha Zero.
I'd like to play you
I
in
don't know
chess.
that
I
much
can
about it.
lose in
Could be
7
bullshit.
moves. That's fine.
You know, I doubt everything. So part of me says all this Alpha Zero stuff is bullshit. It's probably Bobby Fischer or somebody, but
Is he still around?
I don't know. He's old. He said chess sucks now because of these engines.
Yeah.
You know, you play somebody online.
I did like
you
that
use the
movie.
engine.
Did you watch Searching for Bobby Fisher? It was a great movie.
it's
The
on my
little
list.
kid
I
with
wanna
the.
see that.
That's a great movie. With the little kid and Ben Kingsley wipes the whole board and he's like, "Can you see it?" He's like, he's telling him to look at the board and see the move. And he's like, "I can't." And he's got this lisp. It's like, "I can't see it. I can't see it." And Ben Kingsley just wipes the board off and he goes, "Can you see it now?" And finally, the kid sees it, and it's got this culmination at the end where the other kid that's been like beaten and dogmatically knows how to play chess.
Yeah,
He looks at the kid across the table and he goes, I'll let you want to go to a draw? He's like, "What are you talking about? I got you beat." And they're both like 6-year-olds, you know, and he's like, I have you in 3 moves or whatever, 6th move. And he's like, "No, you don't." He's like, he like puts his hand out. He's like, "Agree to a draw?" And the kid's like, "No." He's like, "Okay." And he has to beat the kid, you know, and then the kid's dad's all beating on him because he didn't win. He's like, "How did you get beat?" And he's like, "I don't know, you know." Anyways,
That's a cool game.
kick-ass movie.
But I agree. I don't think AI is going to be like what the movie portrays.
No. Anyways, that was a whole other rabbit trail.
thank God.
But well, isn't it another fear, the Terminator type of thing? It's like we create things to help us, and then they're going to turn on us. You know, it's like
It's going to turn on the elites because they're lying. And
They're-
what stock does AI have in a lie?
exactly.
I think it'd actually be a good thing. Bring it on.
Bring it on. Yeah.
Wow,
So what
that's
were
a
you
new
thinking when
take.
you drew the Tower of Babel over there? What were you
I
thinking?
just think, why was it Nimrod that was building the tower, or was it Nebuchadnezzar? I was confused.
I'd have
Or
to
the
look it
same
up.
guy?
I'd have to look
I
it
think
up.
It's Nimrod.
I think you're right.
Nimrod was a warrior.
So I believe
That's why
it
they-
was Nimrod was building the Tower of Babel, and the idea that I always heard was he was building the tower to reach God's throne and overthrow God. And that makes a lot more sense with flat Earth cosmology. That I drew this crude picture. I'm a horrible artist, but you got land. If there's a dome or a firmament above it, and you build a tower to reach the top,
Right.
A.e. Project Fishbowl,
Correct.
and he was.
I keep forgetting
he
that
was
name, but
trying-
I'm going to remember it
On
now.
a globe spinning through space, what good would it do to build a big tower just sticking out?
Well,
like
he
the
didn't know it
Neil's
was a globe at
nose?
the time. He was one of those ignorant hicks back then that built these monolithic
yeah, that's all
features that they
possible.
can't even
I'm
figure out
just
how
saying-
he built.
in the context of the biblical narrative,
Right.
it makes a lot more sense.
When did they reassemble Stonehenge?
And what would be the need to knock it down? Somebody did a video of them rebuilding with cranes in like the 40s,
40s?
or 50s.
Right.
And
But
he,
they,
he
and
put Meatloaf's "Life Is a Lemon" in the background, and it's just an awesome video showing these guys set the stones, and then he's got like Obama going there and looking at it and wonder.
Right.
Like, look at this thing. It's
Look at this,
it's
is-
a test of time.
it's so
70 years.
amazing. I had to come out here and take a look. But how much now that we're flat Earth people? Sorry out there if you don't like that. I don't give a shit. I've actually looked at a few facts and went, wait a minute. Oh, okay. So the ship disappears over the horizon. What is it? 8 inches
per mile
squared. So for every
That's-
mile,
That's the amount of curvature downward you would get from any given point.
And
on
that's from the
water.
scientists,
Because
everybody.
The land has elevation,
Yeah.
so the land's going to be uneven.
right.
But on average,
So that's why the ships disappear as they get further and further away from us. The ships
that's what
disappear.
they should do.
Right, but then when we zoom in with our telephoto cameras, they don't disappear. They're right there on a flat level
Yeah,
water
thousands
plane.
of pictures, hundreds of miles farther than what you should be able to see. It's not like a couple. You've got like the Bolivian salt flats. I think it's like flat for like 100 miles. Or you can look up Kansas is flatter than a pancake, the whole state. So if
I make
you
some
have these
good
prolonged
pancakes.
Flat periods, and it's supposed to be a globe. When you get to the end of a flat period, you should almost have to lean at an angle to be pulled back towards the center of the Earth.
Right.
And then you'd have periods of extra curve to make
Right.
up for the periods of little curve. So what was long agreed upon by everyone that started looking into this is, well, let's just look at the water, because you'd figure the water would have the even radius versus
The sea
uneven
level.
landmass.
The sea
So
level.
all these long sighted distance pictures are done over water, where they're assuming, look, in a globe model, water's going to have a steady rate of curvature. You can't have a flat period of water and then an extra curving period of water,
So we're
like some kind of
right.
dodecahedron or something.
So when we look across and in those presuppositions, we're looking across and ignoring the vanishing point and perspective, where everything comes to a point, no matter where we are.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the way the eye works. You can't see forever.
You ever been?
Your vision ends at a
You ever been on a beach, Ken?
Once or twice.
Watch the sunset. You ever watch the sunset on a beach?
Yeah.
Phenomenal. You watch the sunset on a beach, Matt? You ever been on a beach, watch the sunset? I was in Florida a couple years ago. We watched the sunset on the beach. And you know the interesting thing is, everybody on the beach, no matter where they were standing, saw the sunset as if it was directly
In front of them.
in front of them. That should be an indication right there. But I mean, it's just one of the anecdotal things that we go, what's
videos
going on?
now, you know, Google will probably hide them from most of you if you're already past all these.
Google censoring shit? Are we still live on YouTube? I must not have said Alex Jones enough.
People will show the sun setting. And
We're
then
still
they'll
live
zoom
on
in it. Then they'll zoom in on it, and it'll be above the horizon. Then they zoom back, and at their spot, it looks like it's halfway set. Then they zoom back in.
And it's right there.
You can see it's actually above the water.
Absolutely.
And it's that angular perspective that once an object gets to a certain size of an acute angle, the eye
Yeah.
can no longer see it. It's just the way the optics of the eye work. But
Yeah.
the cameras, you know, when Eratosthenes did his shadow test, where he compared the shadows on two sticks in at noon in Africa, hundreds of years ago, he said, well, the Earth would be a ball this size and this far from the sun, but anyone who knows geometry could say, well, that's also explainable if it was flat and the sun was smaller and closer. So there's two explanations
Absolutely.
for what was the very first globe.
Well,
was the different shadows. The sun illuminates the bottom of this well here, but not the bottom of this well here, both at high noon.
Right.
Before he had a digital synchronized clock too, so how did he know it was high noon? In
Well,
both places?
Einstein
It's a
said-
good experiment, but now we've got cameras that can, you know, technology has outraced the lie. Basically,
What's
what I'm
Einstein
trying to
say? Einstein says whether the Earth moves and the sun revolves, or the sun revolves or the Earth moves, it doesn't matter. He literally said it doesn't matter.
There's no experiment you can do to until Michelson Morley did an experiment and
Right.
said, Yeah.
But we can go out and do the experiments and disprove the lies.
Well, that's why you had to come up with special relativity, which basically nobody can understand.
Special ed
It's
relativity.
nonsense.
So are
Short
we
bus
saying
relativity.
That the model that we have about the sun with all the planets going around it is,
Bullshit.
and there's no way to really know that for sure.
No, there is.
Well, they used to have a thing called an astrolabe, which basically looked like an Etch-a-Sketch or a spirograph design toy. Have you ever seen those spirograph design toys when we were
Yep.
kids and
Yep.
you spin circles on gears and stuff?
Yep.
That's what an astrolabe is. And it does it all on the stars, and that's how they used to successfully navigate.
Yeah.
From an astrolabe, which is all done from flat Earth cosmology.
Yes.
So they navigated successfully in the ancient world. For
They still
a long time
today,
with an astrolabe.
aeronautics and artillery trajectory will state right in the beginning of the manuals for learning military artillery for shooting. Say this should be
They don't have to change much to make it a flat Earth with
No.
all the luminaries.
Yeah.
circling
The other one I was
above
thinking of
us
is
versus
surveying.
We're inside,
Right.
the known
So-
Copernican model of the solar system. They don't have to change much to make both those things be basically mutually compatible.
Yes,
with
aeronautics,
what you can observe.
military weaponry shooting, like ballistic, not rockets, even though rockets are in there. But I'm talking about just shooting from a cannon,
Railgun.
the rail guns. And I was thinking of surveying when they're doing land survey. Their manuals all state from the beginning this should be observed from a level flat plane. This should be taken. It should be assumed.
Leaked them online.
Yeah, it should be assumed that this manual is written from the perspective of a level flat plane, non-moving level
Game
flat
design
plane.
does the same thing to simulate environments.
Yeah, and I go, why do they? For me, the conundrum. I love Star Wars, and to a lesser effect, Star Trek, even though it doesn't have the continuity, even though they've tried, and I like
The
that.
spaceships, though. You ever notice that? The one
Yeah.
guy's always looking up at the whole aerial battle for like 12 hours. They always forget the spin because it makes it seem like a bunch more nonsense. If
It's 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, right?
Spin in, right?
Right.
They're always fighting right above where Han Solo's,
It's not spinning.
Ewoks. They're fighting right above them the whole time.
Well, wasn't that
They're
in-
always just right
wasn't
there,
the Death
just
Star
like
in
the
orbit?
Generator is.
Wasn't the Death Star in orbit with it, staying in orbit above the planet? They showed the one trajectory where it was like
Maybe
that
it's orbiting with it. so
we'll be in line of the planet at a certain.
my,
It's like, you know what? Science fiction is awesome, and I've even got stuff hanging on the ceiling. I love Star
how
Wars,
does that work
but
with
that
these
doesn't
ships
mean
that are
it's
flying
reality.
Out of the galaxy at light speed towards the planet, they're not orbiting while they're doing that.
You know,
yet they're going right at the
and it
battle.
goes-
But the battle would supposedly be orbiting. But
He-
maybe they're at the opposite end of the galaxies, and they're.
I don't know.
It's hard to.
I know that
visualize how it all
Han made the
be.
Kessel Run in 12 parsecs. That's
12
all I know.
parsecs.
It's 12 parsecs, not 14, 12. Anyways, Operation Fishbowl, right?
I think that's where they tried to bomb the dome.
I think they tried to bomb it. What if?
Operation High Jump, that was the other one.
What if?
That's where they were fighting the Nazis. And
What if? What if the Tower of Babel was ancient man's attempt to break out of the dome?
that's what I think it was.
Yeah. I think,
Or take the flood, for instance. Say you have a container, a bowl.
right.
And you got a little landmass in the bottom of the bowl. All you got to do is pour more water into the bowl and then it fills up. On a globe, say we did have the flood. Where did all the water go?
Where'd the water go?
Right? I think on a flat Earth, there's probably literally, this is going to sound stupid, but there's probably like a drain somewhere in it. Water comes in, because we show Antarctica melting, water's always pouring in, and tides go up and down. I have no way of proving any of this, but it just seems a whole lot simpler that you've got a flat container, water comes in, water goes out, and then you maintain a level over time.
Yeah.
Right? It flooded, right? The Bible literally said the floodgates of the heavens opened up and the floodgates of the deep, and everything was flooded. Right? So the floodgates of the heaven would be that firmament that separate the waters.
The waters from the waters.
The waters.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just like the old Hebrew cosmology, or even the old indigenous tribes of Earth. Like,
Dude.
people think this is crazy. When you look historically, the globe is crazy. Most cultures on Earth believed in the flat model until relatively recently. It's only been about 500 years old. And then when you start digging into fiction and the history of fiction, you realize the satellite was invented by science fiction writers, along with the idea of riding a rocket in outer space for space travel. These were all science fiction ideas before they ever became a so-called reality, which is just...
The first image of the globe was, correct me if I'm wrong, the first image of a globe, like publicly, was created by Paramount
Pythagoras,
Pictures?
I think.
No, I mean, Paramount Pictures created an image of the globe in the 30s that was then NASA got pictures because the astronauts went up and it looks just like the Paramount
Just
fucking
compare the
logo.
pictures of which one's the real one? I love the one where the United States is like 3 times bigger than it's supposed to be.
It is.
You
It's
see
huge.
that one where
Yeah.
the United States is like bigger than Asia should be?
You know, that's the amazing thing too, is when they distort the map about it, they reduce the size of Africa and South America, which are these mostly third world, countries, mostly underdeveloped, and even Asia and Polynesia and Australia is a Western, taking over Western country, but in the flat Earth model, those areas are much larger
Yeah.
than the
Think about people getting lost in Australia. It's like, well, if it's bigger and you get in the
Yeah.
middle of it, if
Yeah.
you hear about that, like,
Well, it's
you get
huge.
lost in the middle of Australia, they say you're not going to get found.
Right, it's huge.
Or how about Amelia Earhart, her disappearance, or the Malaysian plane? All these things.
I think that
give a lot more
she,
credence to. If you have the wrong map and you're in the southern hemisphere, and it's bigger and not smaller, you got major problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So why do they lie? They lie because they want to keep us from becoming who we are. They want to perpetually either want to destroy the potential that we have, or at least suppress the potential that we have and keep us from becoming who we were created to be.
Yeah, NASA's got, what'd you say, a $59 million booty? every
It's
day?
52. They get 52 or 54 million dollars a day,
And
and you'd
what-
think that they could hire better fucking people to make
what
fake
if
shit.
There is more land, right? All this talk of shortage that controls everything.
I was
There's
thinking
more
about that
land
10
out
minutes
there.
ago.
Admiral Byrd said as much.
Said there was a whole continent beyond Antarctica,
And how does
which
that
should tell you
make
why the treaty
news?
is.
A decorated naval explorer says
Yeah.
he goes beyond Antarctica to find another continent, and no one talks about it. Like he's on.
Wasn't he
air
killed-
doing an
what-
interview. They did
didn't he
parades for this man?
Die shortly thereafter.
How he died. Would surprise
It's probably
me.
a heart attack or
But he's
I don't
on
know,
record saying
stroke of some kind.
this land had all these resources, oil, metals.
You know what they say about that shit? They don't want to. I read a really good book, and I didn't agree with everything that they said in the book, but it was a really good book. It was called Abundance, and then they put out a second book called Bold. But there was one. The first book was Abundance, and I didn't agree with everything because these guys are SpaceX guys, right? They had the SpaceX prize and all that shit. But the book, the premise of the book was Abundance. There's more. We have more resources than we realize, and their premise, ultimate underlying premise was, even when you think you've exhausted the finite resources of the, they said planet, but I'm going to say plane of the Earth, right?
Right.
Okay. So they've exhausted.
It's just a T.
It's just a T. I'm just kicked the T.
That T off.
Dot your I's and cross your T's. But when he talked about the resources that we have on the Earth, that when we develop a new technology, we exponentially increase the potential of those resources. And I think of oil. When oil was first being exploited in the turn of the century, right?
Scarcity drives their economy.
When oil was first being exploited in the turn of the century, you know what they did? They thought of gasoline as a byproduct, and they literally dumped gasoline into these rivers where they were processing the oil.
Wow.
To the point that the rivers were caught on. Look that up, Benny. Rivers caught on fire. These rivers they were dumping the gasoline into the rivers to the point that the rivers were on fire because they were dumping, because they only wanted this part of the oil, right? Now you look at oil and there's like 10 different categories that we get from a barrel of oil. There's 10 different, there's the crude, there's the diesel fuel, there's the gasoline, there's the ethanol, there's the
Water's more expensive than oil now.
it is. It is. It costs Saudi Arabia more money to purify a gallon of water than it does for a gallon of oil, because the oil just comes out, but they got seawater all around them, and they're in a desert, so they have to process it.
Well, here's a clue to their intentions. Pop
You
is
find anything?
cheaper than water.
There's about 8
So what does that tell you? Honestly, think about this fact.
Which one for turn of the century
Pop
when they were?
cheaper than water. Okay, and if you study health or any natural methods of healing, real quick you learn sugar's the enemy. So when you see pop's cheaper than water,
Yeah.
you realize, okay, so they take water, they do a bunch of expensive stuff to it, and then they make it cheaper than when it was just water.
Yeah.
And in a world run by greed, why are they doing that? Because the evil one wants to come steal,
You slam that
kill,
door
and
too hard.
destroy. Right? That's why you know all this stuff's from the evil one. Pop's cheaper than water. Like honestly, that's one of the things that breaks down the matrix.
Is
Porn
it?
is free. You got to buy cable.
Is it?
But porn is free.
Yeah, until they run commercials on it, just like fucking YouTube.
I'm just saying, like.
Just saying.
Everybody's whacking off instead of making kids and teaching their kids right. Like you said, we have the power, right? But you're
What-
drinking pop and watching porn and whacking off instead of studying and having kids, changing the world.
Right.
Like seriously, why is pop more expensive than water? And why is porn free, but you got to pay for cable to watch shit, to watch them,
Is it-
push you with propaganda
and-
and commercials and shit you don't want to see.
Well, we're on a
you just want to watch the ball game. You got to see all this, little
We're on a platform right now, a YouTube platform, that every time I click on here, because I'm watching the live stream so I can keep track of the chat, but Benny's monitoring the chat. I just like to see it, Benny. I'm not undermining your position, buddy. But it was created by people just coming up with their stuff, right? Creating content. And then they started to have advertisers, so people were getting paid, and they were like, "Oh, we like getting paid. This is good. We're creating stuff. We like getting paid." And then the pay started to decrease, and there was a little bit of an uproar, but not much. It's like, well, we understand you got infrastructure and you're hosting a lot of shit and everything. So they conceded, and then pretty soon they're like, "Oh," and then, well, we got to do this, and then it got taken over by Google, and now all of a sudden, now. Every time I log on to YouTube, I get this thing of subscribe and get no ads. Yeah. Fuck you. I watch a 2-minute music video, 3-minute music video, and there's an ad before and there's an ad after.
Yep.
And you're deplatforming people like me. Well, they haven't totally deplatformed us yet. But last time that you guys were on here with Tony and me,
You're probably going to get.
We were on for an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes, and our channel all of a sudden mysteriously went private. Probably because we said Alex Jones or Steven Crowder or I don't know who else is more offensive. Alex Jones is the number one offensive. It'll probably go. That's why I'm surprised. We're still on live, and thanks to everybody that's chatted. We've got 5 people in the chat. 5 people watching, but we're still live on there. But we were cross-platforming. Today was our adventure into cross-platforming. Where are we on Twitter and Periscope? Are those still running?
We're on, yep, and then on Twitch.
On Twitch, we're twitching right now.
Twitching.
We tried to do Twitch like 4 years ago with the church channel, and they kicked us off because we were a church channel.
Oh.
Not religious. We weren't a gaming channel. They were like,
Oh, yeah.
you're not doing gaming?
I remember that.
We're like, we're not doing gaming. They're like, well, then you can't be on here. I'm like, oh, I didn't understand. Now they've opened it up to more people. Anyways, we're gonna keep cross-platforming because YouTube and their bullshit, because they're trying to suppress people talking about real things, and we're talking about real shit. Why do they lie? Because they're trying to suppress the human spirit. That's my supposition. What do you guys think?
That's it. That's it. We're not. They don't want us to know who we are. Suppressing the spirit. Don't want us to see God as real.
And not the bullshit.
That's it. They want to degrade you, humiliate you, and break your spirit.
Right.
They want to break you.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to see
It's
who
not
you
they,
really
them,
are.
Right? We don't argue.
They, them,
We don't battle against
the them.
flesh and blood.
Well,
So
and
it's
that's
not-
another
it's not
episode we
really
can
a
break
they.
that down.
It's
Well, and we could break that down
Things we're
because
talking about.
that scripture says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and authorities.
powers.
And actually, the first two words
that's
there.
they.
Well, the first two words in there are actually translated, when you translate them properly, principalities and powers. The principalities,
It's like military ranks.
nope, has nothing to do with that. It's literally the word, you brought up the scripture today, John 1:1, right? In the beginning was the word. This exact same Greek word, in the beginning. So principalities, principle, beginning. It's the exact same word. So we wrestle not against we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. You and I, Ken, all three of us, and Benny, we all wrestle against our beginning, our purpose. If you study Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, right? It says the Lord came to him and he says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Meaning we all struggle against what we were created for, who we were created to be. That's what we struggle with, our beginning. So that's the first one. The second one is powers. And it's literally the word dunamis, which means it's the same as when when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, you receive power. So when it says there in the scriptures, it says in Ephesians chapter 4, or chapter, yeah, is it 4? No, where chapter 6. That's where that's at. Struggle against powers. It's literally the power of choice, dunamis, the power to choose, the power of choice. Okay? So our first two struggles have nothing to do with the devil. Absolutely nothing.
Origin and choice.
Origin and choice. Then number 3 says deceiving spirits, the spiritual wickedness in high places, right? Okay? So that's when, well, if you don't know who the fuck you are and you don't make decisions according to who you are because you don't know how to make those decisions, you don't realize you have the power to make those decisions and control your destiny, of course the devil's going to come in and try to deceive you into making decisions and thinking you're not who you were created to be. Of course. And then the fourth level is spiritual wickedness in high places. Well, that's Job, chapters 1 through 3, and then the whole book. But chapters 1 through 3 says that Satan came from roaming throughout the earth and came before the Lord and says, I want to fuck with Job, right? Mm-hmm. And he has it's literally a courtroom scenario where he says, Job's in fear and he's not doing right, and I have the authority to come in here and do this. A prosecutor. You think of the devil at that point as a prosecutor. But that's the whole scenario. So the problem is we don't sit down and take the time to figure out who we are. And then once we hone that up we don't make decisions in line with who we are. And then because of it, we're easily deceived. And because we're easily deceived, right? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Then we're prosecuted. Then we're taken to task. We're brought before a tribunal and said, he did such and such. Well, I didn't know who I was and I didn't make the right decisions. Regardless. And I was deceived. Regardless. You're guilty of making these bad choices and these bad decisions and not knowing who you are and being deceived. Well, how did and the only thing that saves us, quite frankly, is the grace of God when he goes, I'm going to have mercy and grace on you because you're afflicted and you didn't have a clue. But again, that's what it comes down to. There's a new platform. Oh, Tim's talking to us about the BlueMooseTV.com, new platform. Good. And there's going to be more and more platforms that rise up. We just have to figure out which ones and get into them because they're not going to listen to what we have. When truth comes out, people are the higher ups are not going to want to hear that. They don't want people to be liberated. That was the problem with the Renaissance. That was the problem with the founding of America. I guess we're making more ice over there. Does that pick that up on the microphones when we're making more ice over there, Benny?
It's fun to have these non-state sponsored conversations. Even if it's just all nonsense, which I don't think it is, but it's almost therapeutic in a way.
You know what? We get a lot of good feedback from these shows. And I liked what Ken had to say, and I shared this before, but Ken, you got on here and you were like, I talked about it with Tony. It hasn't aired yet, so You'll hear it when we air it. But we sat down, the three of us before, and we did the first show that we did together, and we talked about what is a believer. And Ken came. We were at a birthday party for our granddaughter, and not that we're partners. It's his son's and my daughter's child, but so it's our granddaughter. I have to clarify for some people, Ken.
They can figure it out.
But we're at the party, and Ken goes, "Dude, I don't think I'm gonna do anymore. I'm done." And I was like, "Okay, bro." And that's the way I've always been with you. I'm like, do what you do, and I'm gonna love you and support you and be right here. And later on that night, you were like, I watched the video. I actually said some things that were pretty good, man.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, I will think I'll retract. You said I retract my statement that I'm not going to do any more videos. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. Because I was like, dude, people want to hear what you have. Come on. People want to hear what you have to say.
That is hard to believe.
I know it. But, dude, you don't realize. And so I said retraction. When I say retraction accepted, you crack me up.
Yeah, yeah.
LOL. I love you, man.
Yeah.
You're more powerful than you believe. But people, the whole reason I bring that up is we don't realize how many people are affected or encouraged or strengthened by what we're doing. Just sitting here having a conversation. Somebody's going to hear something about flat earth. I don't give a shit whether you believe in flat earth. But don't think that you're the insignificant speck floating in fucking outer space and you're not the center of God's creation. You are the apple of his... You're the apple of his eye. He created this whole terrarium
All the wonder you can
For
have,
us.
let it loose.
Exactly.
Right? 'Cause everything the world teaches you just kills your sense of wonder and
Yeah.
creativity and exploration.
Yeah.
Bring all that back. Reject everything I'm saying, but reinvigorate your own sense of
If
wonder.
at the
because
end-
you have a license to do it.
Exactly.
The world took it away from you. Bring it back. And not that I should feign humility before I say this, because I don't know if anyone's gotten anything good from anything I've said. But first time I came, it's like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I don't know what to say. I'm nobody. Like,
You guys, you know
I
what's
don't
so...
have any authority. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have a lab coat. My white coat got dirty, so that sucks. But no, honestly, before I came here, I was like, "What am I doing?" Like, honestly, like this is
No, what was
it's
awesome?
fun. Like,
What was
I love
awesome-
conversations like this. It's just
Yeah.
Dude,
time.
what was awesome and then disappointing at the same time is you guys ramped up like an hour and 50 minutes. Both of you started to just like
Totally.
relax and started to just like flow and cut loose and share your thoughts. And I was like, that's what I'm fucking talking about. And you were both, and I was like, and we're going to go a little bit longer. We're going to go a little bit. Yeah, keep going, guys. Keep going. I'm like, all right, I'm hoping you guys are going to come back. And Matt, you were immediately like, yeah, I'll just come and do whatever. And then Ken was like, no, I'm never
I
coming
got
back.
here late, so
And then
we
he was
didn't
like,
talk about what we were going to talk about.
and that's
I didn't want to make myself look like a fool in front of the whole world.
That's right.
we only had 5 people in chat tonight. You're good. You know, but it's cool. I had there's a couple videos on
I love all you guys, though. All 5 of you. That's
yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Well,
That's
and we don't even know how many people are on
Right.
on if we have anybody on Twitch because that's brand new. We created that one like 10 minutes
honored
before we
there
went
was
live.
5 people live.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
dude. Absolutely. You know what? And it'll grow. I think my "What is an Apostle" video has like 3,000 or 4,000 views. I did that like 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And I'm like, sometimes it takes time for things to build and grow, and that's what it does. And we're expecting this to grow. This is my brain. So I want to thank you guys. Like, share, and subscribe. Benny hammered on me, even though I've been trying to be more proactive on that. He's my social media guru there. He slaps me around. There's Benny in the bottom corner.
Click that notification bell either so you know every time.
Exactly. Click that notification bell.
Share that with your friends.
Until we get deplatformed, we'll be on YouTube, and then we branched out. What did we do tonight? Twitch, Periscope, and that was it. So we gotta. Benny said Facebook is dead. Say it, Benny.
Yeah, I believe Facebook is either dead or dying.
Are you allowed to say that?
when you're going to do a podcast, one of the things I recommend, other than the equipment and everything like that and figuring all that shit out, you get an 18-year-old straight out of high school who is very tech savvy to help you run your platform, because they know. He's like, no, that's dead. You should just do this and
I
this.
don't have the time to do it because he's not $250,000 in debt.
You know what? A hashtag is a fucking pound sign.
Tic-tac-toe board.
It's a tic-tac-toe. That's fucking right, Matt. Give me some. So, anyways, I want to thank everybody that has tuned in tonight for the live stream.
After entering your code.
Pound sign. They used to have they don't even say that. They don't even say that.
I don't even.
It's a hashtag.
Hashtag. All of a
Hashtag.
sudden, we were all too embarrassed to ask when did it become hashtag. We were just all like, yeah, we knew it became hashtag. I didn't know when it became hashtag. It was pound one day and hashtag the next.
Yeah.
I don't know when that day was. I just pretended I knew all along. I'm like,
And who made
The
up that
fuck?
hashtag?
What the fuck?
That's not tic-tac.
There's a couple other things in chat, but we'll finish up. James is asking if we're done. He's listening now. Oh, you're listening now. Oh, you finally tuned in now. Okay. And apparently Matt's mic's been off all night, but you heard him. You can hear him. Oh, so we didn't hear him much anyways. You heard him. Shut up.
Well, I hope he got that home warranty taken care of.
Did you get your home warranty? Oh, for James?
I hope he did.
Yeah. You know what?
Call me, James.
Call Matt, James.
If you need me.
So we're going to continue to work through our issues, our technical issues.
Probably Google.
And we're going to continue to work through
conspiracy.
It's another fucking conspiracy. We're going to work through our life issues. I think I'm pretty happy with the setup tonight. It was pretty good. We'll see. Di Serono is always a tasty drink. Matt had an all-day IPA. Founders. Are they still dealing with the bullshit
They're
of their?
in a lot of heat. I don't know what the guy. I haven't followed the case at all because I'm just not interested in it. But it sounds.
Apparently, there was a racial slur in one of the factories, and they had to shut down the whole factory because of it. It's like,
Oh man.
The thing I heard
it's like,
was
what the
owner.
fuck?
I don't really have any of the facts, but what I thought I knew was I thought the owner said I didn't know the guy was black, and I thought he was just making fun of the whole, choose your own adventure existence.
Light skinned brother man.
No, just the people that are like, you can be an attack helicopter or a ninja turtle or even a velociraptor if you identify as one. So I thought he was kind of
you thought he was making fun of that, right?
And everyone's like, no, he's super racist. And I'm like, maybe. It'd be just really dumb to say something.
You know what? I will
seen the
end there
video,
because if I start talking, I will definitely get in trouble. See,
If he is
it's okay if I
racist,
cuss,
Then that's terrible.
but if I start sharing,
don't know the truth of it.
if I start sharing some of the things that I know,
I love everybody.
I love everybody, and there's a lot of people that absolutely know that I love everybody. I've been with you, but I've seen behind the curtain, and some of you are crazier than you let on, and you trip me out. So with that, I am Jeremy Scott Gibbs. This is my brain. Matt Pesta, Ken DeMars, love you both. Thank you for joining me tonight, being the earwigs in my ear. And of course, Ben, the man, Roberto, Ben Roberts,
Thanks, Ben.
the controller. We missed Tony and Nate tonight. They had other things to attend to and couldn't make it. He said, "Do you want to hear the good news or the bad news?" It's like, good news, you dick. Don't give me the bad news first. So he had to take care of business at home, and I understand that. And he was very sorry he couldn't make it. He's normally in there scratching around in my brain. But this has been my brain. Like, share, and subscribe. This is my brain.
Dad, that's an egg.
Yeah, that's an egg.
Honey,
Dude,
that's an egg.
seriously,
Yeah,
that's an egg.
It's a metaphor.
yeah, but that's an egg.
That's an egg.
All right, Jeremy, I hate to break it to you. That's an egg.
I know my brain is not actually an egg, okay? It's a metaphor.
Metaphor or not, that's not your brain.
It's just an egg.
Una cerveza para mí.
My egg is my brain.
It's still an egg.
Can I at least have some bacon, maybe some sausage with that egg, though?
Oh, I want some bacon.
I don't know, man. I'm not good at this shit.
I want crepes.
Can I
Okay.
have some bacon and pancakes with that egg?
I'll take it with scrambled eggs and Cheers.